Checking audio. Check. One, two, three. Final sound check. Thank you.
All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our special Committee of the Whole budget meeting for Thursday, March the 6th. As I call the meeting to order, I just want to acknowledge we hold these meetings in the traditional territories of the Coast and Strait Salish peoples. Specifically, we recognize the Lekwungen people, known today as the Kasapsum and Songhees nations, and how their connections to these lands and waters continues to this day. Our first order of business is approval of the agenda. I just ask that we move the recommendation, which includes opportunity for public input. Moved and seconded. Thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. I am not doing any mayor's remarks tonight, other than I hope that we have a chance to get through this. It's obviously some tricky times for us, and I actually had a couple of remarks made, but I don't have my notes with me, so if there's anything I've missed that should be said, I'll rely on our staff here to provide those. But certainly looking forward to the opportunity to go through this and appreciate all the work that's gone into this slightly now modified version approach taken. So thank you, Ms. LaChance. With that, I'm going to hand this over to staff. And I think first up, do I hand it Ms. Williams? Welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. And welcome to the senior leadership team who are all out here tonight. It's a big moment for us. Tonight, staff present you with the 2025 to 2029 five-year financial plan. The budget process that got us here tonight started last summer when we began projecting. In December, you reviewed your priorities and made some minor adjustments. The directions you provided at that time are reflected in this budget. So too are other directions that you have provided over time. And those are with respect to asset management, projects, and initiatives. The 2 months that have elapsed since December have been far from status quo. There has been uncertainty of a sort we have not experienced since the pandemic. We know these are anxious times for our community, for the province, for our country. We know that there are some who may lose jobs, may see diminished returns on investments that are funding their retirements, or face other economic hardships. Staff are sensitive to that, and we know you are too. We have prepared a budget based on your previous directions and the increased costs associated with delivering to historic service levels. The reality is the costs are going up and local governments are being asked to do more. Your leadership team has gone through the budget with an eye to reducing expenses wherever possible without affecting service levels, to finding efficiencies, to doing things differently to save money. The budget you have before you reflects that work. We recognize that the work we have done may not be enough to respond to the pressures you are no doubt feeling. Pressures for both more and better services, and pressures to hold the line on tax increases. We know that other municipalities have tried hard to limit tax increases, and that the province has just tabled a hold the line budget. We recognize the burden of political leadership, the challenge of balancing service levels against willingness and ability to pay. We recognize you do not have an easy task before you. We are here, to the best of our ability, to provide you with the information you need to support your decision-making. As you hear from our teams, there may be certain areas you'd like to explore further to support your final decisions, things you may want to do a little deeper dive on. To make sure you have all the information you need to take a deeper look into those areas, we would like to ask that you identify these as we proceed and ask that they be addressed in the meeting scheduled for March 13th. That way you will have the opportunity to review all of these areas that you want to explore deeper together and in the context of the full package. Your Chief Financial Officer, who has been the lead on getting us here tonight, can provide an overview of the budget. And as a part of the presentation, and something else that we've changed this year, each of our department directors will provide a few highlights of the 2024 work and the planned work for 2025. And we're all available to answer any questions you might have. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our CFO, Ms. LaChance.
Welcome, Ms. LaChance.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Ms. Williams. What a wonderful introduction to set the tone for this evening. I'm myself so pleased to be here. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This will be my first budget presentation to this group. I'm honored to be here. I'm also honored that we're taking the approach to co-present with my esteemed colleagues that are here with us this evening. I couldn't be more proud to be sitting here with the hard work that we've done to prepare. But I share with Ms. Williams in her comments that we understand the hard work ahead of Free Mayor and Council, both this evening and next Thursday. I'm honored to provide my expertise to help you navigate those challenges. And I hope tonight you'll find a very good overview and the opportunity to ask questions and get further information to support your decision-making and deliberations. I did want to say a few opening remarks and mostly just words of thank you. Of course, everyone here contributed to development of the budget, but I also have a strong financial services team and behind me who I know will be listening in online. I just want to take a moment to thank them for their hard work. I have my Deputy Director of Finance, Alice Buenaventura, joining me just behind. We unfortunately ran out of room, which maybe we could squeeze over and get her in eventually, but she is so key to the work that I'm doing with you tonight. I also wanted to take a moment just to share my thoughts because I am new to the district, newish. I think I get a couple more months of that, right, Bonnie? Yeah. I just wanted to share my thoughts that we have an extremely engaged community, and I've benefited greatly since I started with the district in those conversations, the feedback, and I've also come to know the vast volunteer network that exists here in the district. Definitely a local advantage. And definitely has played into the approach to developing the financial plan as well as the materials. In fact, some of the changes we've made have been a result of some of the feedback that I've received from the community directly. I hope the community that will read it or be online or in chambers here will find the material very helpful. With that, I'll go ahead and transition into the approach. Again, just to maybe reiterate, Ms. Williams did allude to what we've set up in terms of design is to provide a presentation overview today, and then be able to come back on a second day and do some deeper dives, further conversations, and assist with the decision-making that we expect. With this draft, we do seek Council's prioritization, direction on matters of policy, as well as service levels, ensuring that staff align resources most effectively to meet the needs in the community while also addressing future challenges. What we have here is a draft plan covered in the presentation, as well as the report and appendices in the package that you've already received. I would characterize the budget as a base budget without impacts of potential tariffs, as well as any prioritization that we'll see through these deliberations. It is reflective of the decisions to date, inclusive of the council priorities set out for us in December. Just to provide a little bit of background on the package, I hope you will have found the report and the appendices an easy read. The structure of it is to take you through the expenditures at a high level, revenue, reserves, debt and capital, by providing also the references to the appendices so that you'll have more detail included, but really focusing in on the material that you'll need to make decisions. I'd like to go ahead and transition into the presentation at this point, but just maybe checking in with your worship if there's any questions or comments.
I don't hear if there's any questions. I don't imagine there is any at this point. I do just want to, though, acknowledge, and I found my computer finished rebooting here. Okay. I did want to just acknowledge that work done. Obviously, the council priorities work, but the community input that led into things as well, and the following the financial guidelines, but also the many departmental reviews that went on. So I do just want to acknowledge that. That's an enormous amount of work to get us to where we are now. It seems like well, it's not a simple document, but that all leads in there. I also just wanted to sort of put out there, my hope is this meeting will be between 2 and 2.5 hours. This is hopefully not going to be extraordinarily long meeting, so I think we, and all of us, to keep our thoughts and comments and questions focused, and we'll try and get through this as best we can. As noted, the intention here is to flag questions that could be taken away and then come back to this table so we have fulsome and answers and understanding of the impact. So thank you. Go ahead, Ms. LaChance.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the recommendation for Mayor and Council for this meeting is to receive the report, approve the financial plan, so that we can, staff can prepare the draft or financial plan bylaw for approval. That may be today, that may be next meeting, but that is the recommendation on table. With that, I'll jump into the presentation. So just up to the screens there for you, I have a table of contents for the presentation. We're going to begin with corporate planning and context for the organization, overview for Mayor and Council. Then we'll move into an overview of the consolidated budget. And then we'll follow up with our much coveted and very exciting department presentations. And I'm hoping we'll have time this evening to circle back to wrap up with funding and a touch back to reserve and debt health. We will be looking to grab the items from council as they come up for more discussion. I'll keep a running list of those and make sure that we're ready for the agenda next week. And then I also have a couple of slides prepped for some options for consideration to mitigate the tax rate increase. So those will be the slides for today. I'll go ahead and jump in. So we start off with the first slide on the financial planning timeline. This is just to remind the community and Mayor and Council of the key milestones in this financial plan process. We start off in October with the financial planning guidelines, where we check in early, look for direction, and take a read on what the current economic context is. Just if you're looking at this slide, it's just over to the left, and I'm moving left to right. We've already alluded to the key milestone around council priorities. We take that direction in December. We then move into budget preparation, which does take a number of months as we work with staff, review programs, review some of the past performance, and then we head into budget deliberations with where we're at now. We're doing that in preparation and in alignment with legislation to prepare the financial plan bylaw in April. And that's in advance of the tax rate bylaw that is required to be in place and approved by May 15th. The schedule ahead of us, Council, is March 6th today, this evening, a special committee of the whole, followed by March 13th, another special committee of the whole. And we have planned to take the 3 readings and the final approval of the bylaw, March 24th and 14th. And of course, we can amend that schedule as required. So just to provide some high-level context on the financial plan approach, and this is work that we take seriously as we endeavor to build the financial plan. I go through this knowing that you know, the tax rate increase that we're seeing is very consistent with what we thought we would see this year based on the prior year plan. But we did go through all of the exercise, I assure you. And so this is some of the work that we did. Just moving left to right. So on the left, we've got, we stop and very much take a look at the past performance. And this year we embedded a 3-year average reference point for all staff. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you. I could see Rennick doing something from the side. Mr. Rennick. Apologies. So thank you for that. And then, of course, at that same time, we're taking direction around service delivery. My experience here at the district is that we take service delivery direction quite frequently. We are coming to council often and with robust reports in terms of the service levels that we need to check in on in decision making. When there are opportunities, we are here. That feeds into the ultimate development of the financial plan. Also, we are actively, as we're growing and changing, doing service review work. So a good example of that currently is in building and planning. We have an optimization project underway. Just over to the right, economic context. We check in, as I mentioned, early in the process in October, and then again when we bring the financial plan report forward now. The economic context I'll get into in the next slide a bit more, but we look at it as an indication for the assumptions for the budget. They aren't directly inputted into the financial plan. So we look to check in on our inflation numbers, but we're not taking the most recent monthly indicator to do that from the market. And then just lastly there, the guidelines that we check in on October, those really do give us the direction we need to prepare the financial plan. So just on this slide, I just had a few notes to share. Definitely, it's a situational awareness. On the left, supply and inflation, as we go and finalize and balance and look to funding strategies, we can incorporate matters around supply and inflation. We obviously have been watching very closely the threat of U.S. tariffs and also what our local inflationary environment is compared to other jurisdictions. Typically, we'll compare that provincially, and then we'll also compare that nationally. And so as you noted, probably noted in the report, inflation is locally, remains high, relative, and it also unemployment is remaining quite sticky, being half of the national. There's a very, I'll call it a very strong focus internally for us to prioritize the services that we're delivering, manage within the means we have. And I think if I could share my sentiments with council, I would encourage support as we navigate to prioritize. Some of the work we'll be doing with asset management in phase 2 will be to come back and engage council. As we make some of those prioritization decisions around assets, they will have a meaningful impact on the financial plan and our financial strategy. We are, as I mentioned, underway in terms of review and optimization, and other departments are learning from that expertise, and we'll be undertaking some of that. And then lastly, the legislative environment. We are preparing ourselves and are ready to absorb other provincially mandated programs and adopt new regulatory changes. An example of this is just recently announced. Our asset management reporting will be mandatory as part of our annual filing with the ministry. That's within the next few months here, but we have to be ready to report audit quality data related to assets, so that's all brand new. But those are just examples of what some of our departments are having to grapple with on a day-to-day basis. So the next, next couple of slides are just a reminder and also a moment for me to give accolades to the organization. Being fresh eyes, I of course was very keen to understand the state of policy as it relates to financial management, and I can see that the effort that council and staff have put in to put in best practices in financial management through policies has resulted in a fairly good coverage of policy. We've got the asset management policy in place, reserves and surplus, budget transfers, investments, sustainable procurement. Those are all really cornerstones in policy development. And usually with financial management, you're looking for a suite of policies. And to have all of those in place already is a very, very good thing to have. And the next slide is the a little bit more detail maybe than I'd go through. I won't go through every line, but this is really just to say that there are a lot of best practices in play. Doing a priority check-in as council does on strategy, having the financial planning guidelines early, checking in on performance, all of those are what you want to see when you're trying to manage prudently. And this is just a slide. I can probably skip it because I had some help from the mayor as well as Ms. Williams in terms of the changes we've made to the package and why we've done it. This presentation will be provided to you, so you can always preview this slide at a later time. But suffice to say, there was some real intention in the redesign of the package. Happy to have feedback, and we're really committed to continuous improvement. And if we don't try, we'll never know. So I think that if I could encourage, if you do have any feedback or suggestions, please feel comfortable. So I just have a couple more short slides here before we move into the consolidated budget. This is a reminder for council that the budgets that we've already considered have been the police services. That was a provisional approval by the police board. And then was recently amended and is included in your package. It was uploaded today. The Greater Victoria Public Library, Council received that just last week, I think, February 24th? Recently, as well as Oak Bay Tourism. And lastly, just to draw attention to the correspondence that we've received, we did receive the Business Improvement Association budget as per bylaw and as per plan. We also received a late budget request that I would draw council's attention to. It's from the Urban Wildlife Stewardship Society. That has been attached, and we will be looking for council's direction on how you wish to handle that. It has not been included in the draft financial plan, but happy to take direction from council. And then lastly, any emails received up until now have been included. So I'll just stop there. Any questions, comments? Okay, I'll keep moving. Thank you. So this will still be me. We'll get to everyone in a few minutes here. I'm pleased to present the consolidated plan. This is a slide that I always like to resurface, and it never gets old for me. This is the foundation of the corporate process that we follow. In terms of planning, it's really critical that everyone is singing from the same song sheet and that we all know why we're participating and what we're trying to get out of it. This is our go-to. It also talks about accountability, and I think that that's a very important not to lose sight of how much work council and staff do to also report back on the variance from budget. So this graphics included to be able to allow me to say all of that, but also to reinstate that the draft financial plan has been prepared with all of these activities in mind. The total consolidated expenditures have been provided on this slide. The view here isn't only operating expenses, it is all of the expenditures that we're processing and supporting through the capacity within the organization. We've got in 2025 a total of 132 million of expenses expenditures that we're processing. You'll note there's a split, about 44% in operating expenses. Capital expenses make up about 43%, and transfers to reserve 11 of that total. Within that expenditure budget, there are some key drivers. And I have itemized them here, but they are also within the appendices and directly referenced within the report. The summary here is not exhaustive, but only to give a reminder that the drivers are an area for deliberation that we can seek direction and will be seeking direction. So first, just moving left to right, we've got council priorities, which is included in Appendix 4 in the report. There's about 2.2 million in 2025 being invested with council priority projects in the areas of housing action plan, climate action, heritage standards and incentives, asset management development, and there are quite a few more. So I encourage viewers and I encourage those who would like to see the listing to refer to the appendice. The priority projects are mostly funded by surplus or grants, and so isn't a direct correlation to tax revenue, but still is a driver in expenses and supported by the capacity within the organization. Within the middle there is the new requests, also within Appendix 4. The total expense costing is $2.2 million in 2025. However, you will note within the Appendix 4 that it is, oh, we must have an appendix wrong there. It must be 3 and 4. Apologies for that. Within the appendix, you'll notice that the impact on tax revenue is $600,000, whereas the expense base is 2.2, and that difference is attributable to staff supporting capital as well as staff funding coming through user fees. And just on the right, previous direction, which is notable for council, significant investments being made and are definitely seen as a cost driver for 2025. That's outlined in Appendix 5. The total that's been summed up is $1.2 million in 2025. Funding for critical asset replacement with the Sustainable Investment Infrastructure Replacement Plan. Additional active transportation investments with the 9-project program approved by Council March 28th. As well as the fire services staffing capacity, which was approved in early 2024. The next slide moves us into revenue, and I'd better articulate that as funding. Again, I've summed up all of the funding because it is a value of transactions that we are managing. 132 million balances us out. You can note that of the total expenditures, we're funding approximately 50 million from reserves, and that's primarily for the capital program. The property value and frontage taxes have been added together to 42 million, and fees and charges make up 25 million approximately of the total. The fees and charges are notable in that when we look to see diversification of revenue principle, we look to make sure that there's a higher ratio, well, a healthy ratio on fees and charges versus the tax revenue. And here you'll see that the fees and charges is coming in around 19%. There's an identification that debt proceeds are planned. This was contained within the previous plan and has been rebalanced with the existing capital cash flow. We've also got a line items there for capital grants, contributions, and some other operating revenue. I've just dived a bit deeper, just for council's reference on the user fees. This is a total department revenue on the user fees, a change in of 2.5. So there's an increase in our user fees of 11% over 2024. And you can see the distribution by department of the user fees, with the largest share being contributed by Parks, Recreation and Culture. And second to that would be water utility at 26% and sewer utility at 20%. I will note just really briefly, because it's a high-level section of the presentation, but the increase in fees, the increase in fee revenue is in part due to increased activity, as well as an increase in fees. So not only an increase in fees. And also relevant to revenue, as we're reviewing at a consolidated level, where will the recreation revenue recovery percentage be at based on the plan, and to recover the expenditures as planned. The plan for the estimate here for 2025 is 60%, and that's up actually 2% from the previous budget. We have received the economic analysis report this year, and we'll be seeing that come back in future reports for fee increases or program adjustments in relationship to improving this recovery rate. I did want to make a quick note there that the actual recovery rate is at 62%, and that's up 61%, up from 61. So just moving into the taxation funding. I'm just resurfacing the earlier distribution to note that there's 31% of the revenue is coming from taxation. The breakdown is in the table attached. We've amended the table, if you're able to see that at the bottom, to include the police budget amendment from the recent council meeting February 24th. That amount adjusts the total increase from 13.3% to 13.5%. And that amended package has been included in the agenda uploaded today. The next slide intent is to provide the drivers for taxation. We will resurface this graphic again, and as I mentioned, I will share the presentation after this evening, so you will be able to reference it. The graphic on the left helps you see the relative size of the increases, so each driver and its relative increase to the total. And over to the right, you'll see the table that reconciles the 13.5% and the 4.9 million increase in taxation year over year. As I mentioned earlier, this is very much in line with the previous year's expected increase in year 2, which is now our year 1. So I'm just going to move in. I have only just a couple of slides on capital, and then we'll be able to stop for a break for questions or comments, and then we'll be looking to move into the department presentations. This is a somewhat busy slide, but I think a really important one. Capital is absolutely a major focus for the capacity of the organization, as well as a number of priorities within the community to support services throughout the year. The total 5-year plan is 218 million, and that's an increase of around 34 million. I provide the total 5-year investment. Oh, sorry. Oh, thank you. Everybody's whispering, but Ed, you're supposed to bump me. Apologies, you guys. I'm so excited about capital. That's what it is. So I provide the total, not just the annual figure on the capital, because over the 5 years, absolutely we can make decisions about timing, and we can look to stabilize funding through our transfers to reserve. But ultimately, we are seeing a continued trend upwards on the capital that's required. And we're now over 200 million in terms of a 5-year plan. Means that we need to have certain structure, processes, people in place to be able to manage that type of program and project activity. This reflects the scaling that was directed. When you compare the last 3 5-year plans, what you can see is that it's continuing to grow and that the first year is typically much higher. I also wanted to make a comment for council that as we come back and do more work on asset management this year, we will be looking to even out that trend line through the 5 years. We need to make sure that we have risk, condition, capacity data to better allow us to prioritize. Also, our practice is to ensure that we're able to execute procurement. And so we need to ensure that the project or program budget is approved by council so we can proceed to procurement. I did want to just note that when you look at the yellow, oh, we're on the wrong graph, thank you. Oh gosh, you guys.
I'm not past my elbows there.
So on the yellow, it's funny, I was talking to Crystal about this, and I should have a screen and I could stand there and point. That'll be better. Thank you for your patience. So if you note the yellow, those are our actual capital expenditure levels. And so what we're trying to do is make sure that we can rise to the challenge and meet the priorities as set out by council and deliver on those the capital plan. But you can note that that is more than double what we're used to doing. And now we're back to this slide. This slide is just a really quick flyby, but I have included this because you will get the presentation. You can review this later. It provides just a relative size by department of the capital expenditure just for 2025. And then it also provides just below the value, it provides a listing of the major projects. Also included in your package is a list of major projects, which when we come back on capital variance reporting, we'll want to make sure we pay close attention to. So lastly, I just wanted to touch on I want to finish off the consolidated section with the capital funding by source. You'll note that the 5-year plan has a weighted split, 48% and 49%, with the latter being debt proceeds and then balanced out through transfers from reserve. At the end of the presentation, I will circle back to debt management and debt management practices, but I would like to wrap there, pause for questions, pause for comments, and then move into the department presentations.
Sure. Are there any overarching questions? Oh, please go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to Ms. LaChance, I just wanted to confirm we won't have this presentation available to us at this meeting to refer to. We'll be getting it after the meeting. I just wanted to clarify.
Yes, that was the plan. I can look to my colleague, Ms. Anderson, to see if that's possible to get that to you now.
Ms. Anderson?
Thank you. Yes, we can circulate it via email right now,
Okay,
if
thank
that works.
I think it'd be helpful so we can go back and have a check. Thank you.
Okay.
Please continue. Please continue.
Yes. So I would like to transition us into the department summaries. They are organized by department. And the graphic on this slide is just to help us do that transition. This graphic is sorted in order of size of the operating budget. Total budget here is 58 million, and 28% of that is within Parks, Recreation and Culture, with Engineering and Public Works at 13%, Policing and Fire coming in just behind that with 12%, 10% respectively. And then the water utility at 8%, and then we distribute through the various rest of those budgets. I always like to make note that when you can look at engineering as well as water and sewer, that's really the size of the budget that they're managing. But we do keep those as separate funds and track them separately. So we'll go ahead and dive right in. And everybody's going to be getting their presentation now.
Yep.
I hope I don't lose you to all those pretty graphics.
No, we'll stay focused.
You won't? Okay. If you'd like, I can provide a printed copy.
I think that would be helpful.
Okay. Do you mind?
All right, please continue, Ms. LaChance.
Okay. So I have the pleasure of introducing the corporate administration budget and directors. The corporate administration department consists of the following functions: council, chief administrative officer, human resources division, strategic initiatives division, as well as corporate services division. I've included the budget highlights, as well as a notation that there is a capital plan related to this budget that we will review as we move through this section. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass over to Ms. Donnelly to present the first slide on accomplishments for 2024 and 2025.
Thank you, Rihanna.
Let me welcome you. Welcome, Ms. Donnelly.
No pressure. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I guess before we get into the accomplishments that HR has done in 2024 and our planned accomplishments, just wanted to kind of give you a bit of a snapshot of some of the challenges and the pressures and some trends that we're seeing, just to kind of let you know what we are faced with in HR on a daily basis. Things are getting harder. It's getting harder. We live in a real challenging time right now, and we see some of that manifesting in the workplace. So just briefly, we're having greater challenges in recruiting. There's heightened expectations and entitlement, like candidates shopping around and wanting the best deal that they can get. We're running into issues from people outside of the region around housing affordability. We're finding more and more of a trend for people wanting to work closer to home. We've actually lost a couple of people recently because they received job offers and they want that, they want work-life balance and they want flexibility. And so these are the sorts of things that we're seeing in trends there. There always seem to be changes in WorkSafe legislation. So WorkSafe introduced recently early return to work program, which is something that's a pressure on us because basically we are facing penalties and fines if we don't return people back to work sooner. So we are presently in the process of developing a program there, and we're going to be rolling that out in 2025. Increase in complexity in WorkSafe and long-term disability claims. I can tell you, I see Fire Chief McDonald shaking his head. We're seeing more and more in the way of psychological claims, PTSD claims, substance abuse claims. Some of these claims are very, very difficult to manage. They're not like physical claims where somebody sort of sprained their arm and, we have to find the modified work. Mental health claims, mental health issues are manifesting in the workplace. They're turning into performance issues that we have to manage. So some claims we're actually spending months and years. It's taking years to manage a claim. So that's taking a great deal of time and pressure on, the existing HR staff. Like I say, increase in employee relations issues, and just having to really. It's become very operational. I mean, we're getting pulled in all sorts of different directions right now. We're seeing a significant increase in our employee and family assistance utilization rates and usage, and that's great because people are reaching out. It's actually the highest that I've seen since I've been here. But that just kind of shows you that, people are stressed. So don't mean to be a downer because there's a lot of good things happening as well. But with this changing world, and with the things that are happening, with everything that's on the news, those sorts of things are affecting our staff. And I think that it's important that council recognize that those are the things that our managers and our HR staff have to deal with on a daily basis. So it's becoming increasingly more difficult to manage in this sort of environment. So really, we need to continue to build on our ongoing efforts to be an attractive employer. So, we've been trying super, super hard, given the small, nimble team that we have in HR. So I guess I just want to kind of turn it over now to some of the things that we have been able to accomplish that come directly out of our HR plan. And one of the things that's been hugely successful in the organization is we've developed and implemented a flexible work arrangements program. So that allows employees to, get flex time, and some are working modified work, flexible work. We've conducted staff training and development needs assessment. So we have an idea of the types of training that we need to offer, and so that kind of gives us a pathway forward, which is something that we have to do on an annual basis. We've organized a long service recognition event, which is very, very, successful, and our staff love it. Facilitated workplace violence prevention and de-escalation training, and we've developed our own in-house respectful workplace training, and we've delivered respectful workplace training to I think we over 100 employees last year. Our 2025 accomplishments, we're planning on, and again, it's a capacity issue with us, planning and implementing a graduated early return to work program, which is going to take a lot of sort of commitment and cooperation from our directors and managers to make this work, because we have to cut down on the duration of our claims. We need to see the lowering of our WorkSafe premiums and costs. Leadership development, we're presently finalizing putting on a leadership development training program, which is going to be starting in September of this year, and also providing training in managing people. We want to conduct an employee survey and develop an employee engagement plan this year. We're currently participating. I'm working with Chief McDonald in IFF collective bargaining, and we're presently preparing for QP collective bargaining starting, I think, March 31st. And then trying to initiate a staff performance and review program. So, we in addition to that, we've developed a robust occupational health and safety program, and a learning and development policy and tuition reimbursement program. We probably have about 7 employees that have taken advantage of that. We've developed a biannual new employee orientation day that we're going to be starting this year. And so those are the things that we've managed to do. But what we're finding is that because we're getting so pulled away, including myself, on all of the day-to-day operational things, we're having increasingly difficult time focusing on getting some of the strategic sort of program things out the door. So anyway, that's there's some good things happening that we've been working on that I'm really, really proud of. But it's becoming more and more of a challenge to operate. So,
Thank you, Ms.
any
Donnelly.
questions?
Go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and through you to Ms. Donnelly. Thank you for the report. Just wondering on the mental health, you spoke about mental health and issue claims. And so what's the experience like here compared to the region or the broader, I would assume that HR people talk to one another and share information. So I'm wondering if you could speak to that. And then also, you talked about the flex time and work times and spaces, I guess, work from home. And I think of that as primarily impacting administrative staff. And I'm wondering if you could touch on the operational staff, because they don't have the same opportunity to work flex times or work from home. So I'm wondering if you could just speak to perhaps initiatives that we've put into place for the operational people.
Thank you. Thank you for the question and through the chair. The regional, I actually am having a meeting next week with the HR directors in the region. And that's one of the things that's on the agenda is mental health in the workplace. And so I mean, I have talked to other HR directors that are going through the same thing. As a matter of fact, a couple of days ago, we were having some discussions about this, just about the changing landscape in the workplace. And because, you know, sometimes I say, is it just us? But it's not. It's being shared, and it's not just municipal government. It's other industries. So we will be having some discussion about that. But I can assure you that it's not just an Oak Bay thing. It is something that's happening. But I can share what I find after, you know, we do that. With Flex Time, we worked very, very closely. We worked very closely with CUPE on this, and they were a partner in the development of this program. And one of the things that we have regular labor management meetings, and it has been brought forward. What about us for outside workers? But it's not something that is readily implemented in municipalities. It's really, really difficult because you're working in crews. So very, very difficult to schedule those types of arrangements. What we have spoken about at labor management is we're open to looking at some sort of option for outside workers, but we basically were at a place where, you know what, let's roll something out. Let's put this program in place for inside workers, and we will be having some further discussion at our labor management table for options for outside workers. But it's really difficult. I think they tried to pilot that in Colwood, and I haven't heard very good things about that pilot. So anyway, it's just not something that is really a good fit for municipal government.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson?
Yes, thank you. And just to follow up to that then, are there other ways to incentivize the operational staff? I'm sure they see colleagues that are administrative having more opportunities for flex time or flex hours. So are there other ways that we can incentivize the operational staff?
We will be in our regular labor. We've committed to having ongoing discussions with CUPE on looking at other options. So, that's what I can tell you.
Thank you. Don't see other hands popping up for questions. Thank you very much, Ms. Donnelly.
Okay, with that, I'll go ahead and pass this over to Ms. Bay to speak to strategic initiatives.
Thank you.
Welcome, Ms. Bay.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's my great pleasure to highlight some of the few things that strategic initiatives have been up to in 2024 and what we plan for 2025. It's always difficult to fit it on just one slide and pick out the 5 in each of those categories, but I will speak to the items that are there. Last year, as in years before, we supported Council's review of Council priorities. That's been done on an annual basis for the past few years. The review was informed by the community questionnaire that we ran in the spring of last year, and Council selected priority projects that staff included in the budget that you're considering tonight. So there's, as has been mentioned a few times tonight, there's a direct connection between that review of Council priorities and the budget that you see before you. Back in December, you did decide that rather than just reviewing priorities once a year, that you'd like to do that twice a year going forward. So we will be providing for that. We will be coming back to you at the end of June with reports supporting that review, as well as, of course, at the regular previously introduced year-end point as well. Every year, you determine your council priority projects, and after you've done that, Strategic Initiatives goes out and sees what kind of money we can find to help conduct those projects. So that we can offset the impact on the residents' property taxes. I'm pleased to note that grants have contributed over $7 million to 8 council-selected projects and infrastructure projects that are now underway in 5 departments. So that is a significant contribution to reduce the impact on our local taxpayers. Also in 2024, Strategic Initiatives obtained several reports to support discussions on the future of the Turkey Head site, currently home to Oak Bay Marina. And that background work is continuing this year. In fact, we're currently in the throes of a seismic and geotech evaluation right now, and you may have noticed that the drill was actually out on the site today. So that work is underway. With so much supporting information now in hand for the Marina site, we're ready to proceed to engagement on the site with First Nations, potential business partners, and the community. So not too long ago, Council selected the consultant for that engagement process, and the consultant has now been contracted, and we expect to start work on that very shortly. The first phase will be engagement with First Nations. To support engagement with First Nations on the Marina site as well as other district projects, we're also currently working with Songhees First Nation to develop a relationship agreement, which would provide a framework for how we work and collaborate together on matters of mutual interest. In 2024, following council approval, we entered a 5-year contract for animal control services. And I bring that up there because it's also an opportunity to talk about some changes in that area, because January of this year marked a transition with respect to oversight of those services. Responsibility for oversight has moved from Strategic Initiatives to Community Building and Planning, where all bylaw services have now been consolidated within that department. That was not the only change for Strategic Initiatives. As we said goodbye to Animal Control Services, we said hello and welcome to Communications. So Communications is now a part of the Strategic Initiatives team. And so I get to talk a little bit about Communications Initiatives as well. On the communications front, I can share that this year we will be launching a new website and intranet. The site is currently undergoing final testing, and if all goes well, we hope to launch later this month. Per Council's earlier directions, we're on the cusp of securing consultant services to develop and train on a public engagement framework and toolkit consistent with IAP2 practices and the district's public engagement policy. And that work will help us better plan for and deliver on public engagement. So I know that that's something that Council's been looking for a while. We're currently in the throes of seeking consultant assistance for that and expect to start that work shortly. So in conclusion, we anticipate another busy and productive year and look forward to delivering meaningful and quality work for the community and for Council.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bay. So efficient. I guess you have to be doing Strategic Initiatives. Any questions for Ms. Bay at this time? Councillor Patterson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And thank you for the presentation. Just about the UWSS, it was mentioned that it is not in the budget at this time. Could you speak briefly to what information, if any, you have at this point in time that would help inform us?
Ms. Bay?
Thank you, Your Worship. I believe that the request for support has come from our finance director. And really the reason it's not part of the budget is you may recall that in past years there was a grant matching program from the province, and they would announce that in somewhere between September and December. And we would bring forward a report to council asking for matching contributions because that was part of the grant program. And so we really don't have a deer management program apart from the grant application process that we've been undertaking in the past few years. So when we got that, when we saw that there was a grant program, UWSS would see that as well and would prepare a proposal for conducting the services in alignment with the grant, and we would come to council and ask whether council wanted to fund that. And the province's typical expectations were roughly 50-50 type of split. And so we'd bring that for council's consideration and in the past you've agreed to fund that. This year, the province has not indicated that there's any funding available, so the request from the Urban Wildlife Stewardship Society is for council to fund the work in the absence of any matching grants. So that's the request that's there for your consideration.
Please continue.
Thank you. And just a continuation of that, I believe the request from the Urban Wildlife Stewardship Group was also to continue to fund some of the research components of the deer management program. Is that correct?
Thank you, Your Worship. This in 2024, it was really a funding of just the research component as well. Well, I guess research and community education, which is the same proposal that's on the table for this year. There has been no application of immunocontraception for a few years now. But the project has always been considered to be a multi-year program, and that research, I gather, has not yet been completed. And so even in the absence of provincial grant funding, there is a desire on the part of UWSS to complete that research to assess whether in fact the program is delivering the results. And so they see that monitoring phase as an essential part of this program, and are loath to see it end at this point just because the province doesn't have matching funding. The challenge from a district perspective is that we have repeatedly reached out to the province to ask the province what information they need in order to determine whether that program is in fact effective, such that they would be in a position to allow us to apply immunocontraception outside the context of a research program, because right now no municipality in the province is allowed to just apply the immunocontraception. They have to do it in the context of a research program. So we have not heard back from the province on that, and there is also no funding available from the province. So the circumstances of this year are a little bit different, and it's a request that's coming for research funding from an external nonprofit entity outside the context of any kind of program that we would typically deliver as a municipality. The reason we were involved in the past was in the context of a grant. So it is just a little bit unusual, and so that's why it's presented in the fashion that it has been as part of this budget.
Thank you for that. Don't see other questions or hands at this time. Please go ahead, Mr. Charles.
Okay, thank you. I'll invite Ms. Anderson, the Acting Director of Corporate Services, to present the Corporate Services section.
Thank you.
Welcome, Ms. Anderson. Sorry,
Thank you.
microphone off.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. And I was going to note that I am acting for Ms. Plouffe tonight as the Acting Director of Corporate Services, and I'm happy to report on the 2024 department accomplishments and the 2025 plans for corporate services. So in 2024,
Could we just move this slide over?
It's a smaller slide. So in 2024, with council direction, we established the Accessibility Advisory Committee and held the first two meetings. We received council approval for the accessibility plan at a council meeting in early January. And in the fall, we facilitated the electoral assent process for the Oak Bay Business Improvement Area and provided a new bylaw for council adoption. And for records, we focused on the fire department, and with the collaboration with the fire department staff, we neared completion of indexing, coding, and integrating all paper records into our records classification system, and prepared records past their retention period for destruction. And for communications, when it was in our department last year, in December, the district moved to a social pinpoint for the Connect Oak Bay, away from previously it was Bang the Table. And this provided all the tools Bang the Table provided and increased the functionality at a lower cost to the district. So looking ahead for 2025, we endeavor to continue the records management project, and we will be bringing forward an implementation plan for the accessibility plan for council consideration.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm not sure exactly who this question is going to go to. It's just a question on the corporate administration page, which is page 3 in this tab. It talks a little bit about the different positions that are in this under this area, and it says that there's a manager of communications and a communications specialist. And then when you look on the next page, there's no manager of communications, there's just 2 positions under communications specialists. So I was just wondering, do we have a manager of communications, or is that something that's coming in, or did they both end up falling under communications specialists? Because I was hoping that we didn't lose somebody there.
I'll go to Ms. Bay, who now has control.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have not lost anyone. We have 1 manager of communications and we have a communications specialist.
So they're just underneath the 2, we're not adding another position. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I just had one question on that. There's a what appears to be a fairly substantial electronic data management capital project this year. Is that correct? And is that part of the planned accomplishments for this department? Ms. LaChance, I see you reaching for the microphone.
Yes, I just want to jump in, but I am happy to pass it over. When we prepare the capital plan, part of that process is to look at previously approved projects that we still expect to start work on or are already preparing to do work on. So we'll carry those amounts forward. In this example, this project's been carried forward, but I understand the planning work is still underway to determine timing of the project.
That's a satisfactory explanation. Thank you. I don't see other questions, so please continue, Ms. LaChance.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I will take us through just a really quick overview of the change in the operating budget for corporate administration. I'll be doing the slide. I've got the mayor in my corner. This is good. I appreciate that. So this slide, this table is included in each of the budget packages, and this is our first time through it, and it is our newly designed table. So I'm just going to describe it. We will go through it, but maybe quicker with the other departments. So at the top, you'll see the 2024 base budget of 3.39 or 3.4 million. You'll see the additions to the operating expenses for inflation, additional staffing, recruiting software, long service award, and then a communications consultant amount. Those amounts are added up in this table to get you to the 2025 corporate administration operating expense budget of an increase of 8% and 3.7 million. The direct impact to taxation as a result of those operating expenses is just over to the right. And I just would like to provide some color to the changes in the budget. The inflationary increase is ultimately determined through the guidelines. And then we also take a look, of course, by line item and within each of the budgets as we prepare. It doesn't mean that we always include the inflation, but in this case, this is the total for all line items. The additional staffing is articulated in Appendix 4 in your package. That's within the HR division and is for primarily to support the disability management program that was earlier alluded to. The total expense here, and I'm going to note it for council at this point because it's ideal, that the total costs here are 124,000. However, we already had occupational workplace amounts set aside as ongoing, 100,000, which we've now reduced from the budget to offset this. So the net impact from a taxation point of view would be the 24,000. And you will see that in your packages between the respective tables. I just wanted to go a little bit slower on this table just to make sure I was able to walk you through that. The next few items are additional amounts for the year. So the recruitment software would be a one-time amount, as I understand it, of 30,000. The long service award is an additional amount. So it would go to double the amount that we pay for or plan to pay for the long service award. As Ms. Donnelly mentioned, a highly successful employee program with the district. And lastly, as part of the focus and prioritization with communications, there's an additional adjustment to the operating budget of $12,000 for a communications consultant. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and move through. Just going to flash up here the operating budget, just so you can see how the line items are broken down. This is included in your package if you want to spend a bit more time on that. And then I'm just going to jump briefly into the capital, which the mayor has already identified has a project earmarked for the electronic document management system. And additionally, the carryover of the website upgrade. As Ms. Bay had mentioned, the website and intranet are about to go live, and this would be the remaining amounts needed within the 2025 year, so a carryover from 2024. So with that, it completes the presentation for corporate administration, and I'll pause there.
You go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Well, thank you. Through you, Mayor, to Ms. LaChance. Just loving all of the tables and charts and how organized this is. I just had two questions with regards to one of those recent tables, and I'm looking at Appendix 5, page 6, which is the Corporate Administration Operating Budget. Just wondered if you could clarify for me that the special initiatives number under Corporate Administration, the 557,000. Can you just refresh what that is including? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Chair, the next page on page 7, you'll note a listing breakdown of the special projects that the division is responsible for. And they're broken in two separate sections. One is a subtotal for council priorities, and then other projects that the division or department is delivering.
Thank you for that. Appreciated. And my only other question, the same table was, could you just, through you, Mayor, to Ms. LaChance, could you just elaborate on what the council budget includes? When it says 2025 budget for council, I'm assuming that's continuing ed, perhaps phones, laptops, things like that, but I'd just be curious what the entire scope of that includes. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Chance.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. The council costs are primarily remuneration, as well as the related training membership costs and some expense reimbursements for travel.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions. I had just one question on the, I mean, I lost the train there a little bit on the slide that has the additional staffing support. I heard that was something to do with occupational something, and there was an offset. Is there a place that those offsets are sort of listed somewhere so that we actually understand what the net is? And the second piece is, under the other project is an occupational disability claims management. Is that for $100,000? Is that related to what you talked about, or is that just something else in the project list that's in the other projects and the special initiatives?
Thank you for all of that. I appreciate that. So in response, the amount, the difference between the operating expenses that you'll see in this table, I've put the table back up. It's $124,000 for that additional staffing request, offset by the $100,000. That would be seen in the Appendix 4. My tabs are numbered differently than the appendix, and it
Yes,
keeps
I know.
throwing me off. Apologies, you guys.
We've all learned that by now. It's
Yes,
okay.
I know. So I should just like minus it. Yeah. So within your tab number 4, and it's appendix number 4. Luckily, they're the same. You will note a table moving left to right that provides a description of each of the department's new requests, and then you'll note the total expense. And so for this one in particular, it's on page 2.
Got it. Thank you. Top of the page.
Excellent. And if you move over to the right, you would see the actual tax impact net of the related reduction in the budget. And to your second part of the question, included in the project is the amount that we may need for other related programming. It is a one-time amount for a project related to the work that this staff would do.
So that would come out of a capital a procurement in that 100,000. It wouldn't be a tax.
No,
location.
no, it won't be. No, it's already been earmarked from reserve, so it was already established. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Don't see other hands, so please. Oh, sorry, Councillor Watson. My apologies.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a little kind of admin and coding question. The council priorities and the other projects are numbered, and I see that we've doubled up the numbers for the council priorities, and it looks like our council priority project numbers stay intact. What are the other references? I see they're coded and they change, of course, through the document, but how does that align with your financial reporting system? And YSP, for example, here. I could see E for engineering, but I couldn't figure this one out.
Go ahead, Mr.
I
Chancellor.
really relate to those in the crowd that like tables and codes. I'm always happy to answer a coding question and be happy to do it. So, I will just maybe step back for a minute and share with council that part of the exercise for financial services in preparing this budget was to get grant and capital ready. And so we undertook the exercise to ensure that the capital projects, grant funds, and operating projects were set up appropriately in entirety based on council's approval in 2024, and then now as part of our plan for 2025 in our financial system. That gives competitive advantage to all of those around the table that they're easily able to access that data. The benefit to the table in front of me is that you'll know that tables will agree throughout all of the documents that you will receive, and they'll have very similar referencing through the quarterly variance reporting that you'll receive. So we've gone and done the job, as you notice, of coding all of the special projects within our system and then relating those to the council priority projects. And that's where you're going to see the double up. The system approach for creating job codes or job costs is just the next in line. There really is no logic to that one. When it comes to capital, though, however, because of the vastness of the programs, so we have quite a number of projects underway, we do create some intelligence into that master data. And you will see, if it's in the working papers, you will see some reference to E for engineering. In a way. And so thank you for allowing me to share that. That's some hard work that the financial services team has done, and I think that we'll benefit from for a number of years to come.
Thank you. Now I don't see any other hands, so you can continue.
Not after that description.
No.
So with that, we're going to move into the administrative and facilities. And just let me get my computer back woken up here. So for the next two sections or next two departments, it'll be me presenting. And so while financial services, which reports to me, oversees a number of functions, including facilities, we do break that budget out given the materiality. As well as the involvement with other departments by itself. And so that's the first slides that I'll go through. And I'll get us all teed up here. And I just will note while I'm doing that I of course have my partner in crime, David Graham, online as per usual, and I'm happy to have him jump in at any point if I've missed anything, or to help field questions from council. So the Administrative and Residential Facilities Division is responsible for the operation and maintenance of administrative buildings, including Municipal Hall, 1538 Monterey Avenue, 1423 Hampshire Avenue, 1531 Hampshire Avenue, Todd House, and Oak Bay Marina Lands. The budget highlights are over to the right. You can note that there is a revenue offsetting the expenses for a net difference that would flow to taxation. And then you can also see the fairly sizable capital program totals by year. In the 2025 year, there is a planned amounts of up to $4 million. It is important to note that this division not only does facility maintenance and management, but they also do property management, where we have leases or occupants within our properties. They would be point on the managing those contracts. And then we also amazingly are able to take over on major projects as a functioning project management office. And so we're paying close attention to what this division will require in terms of support, processes, best practices, and we're already seeing with the wealth of knowledge around project management that we're able to do some major project work and planning work along with project management best practices that helps it to be efficient. I'm just going to go ahead and jump into some of the accomplishments. So for 2024, there's been quite a bit of work, as you're aware, over on near a fire hall and police department building. We installed a garage door for fire department ladder truck and also installed EV chargers at the station and hall. Initiated public safety building feasibility study with police and fire departments. Completed Carnarvon Park Master Plan, main building analysis, as well as the fire hall washroom design. Finished municipal hall washroom and space optimization designs. And then reduced gas, which is an amazing metric to be reporting back to council this evening. Reduced gas use by 37% and electricity by 27%. Improved facility condition at Municipal Hall, Library, and Todd House through regular routine maintenance. For 2025, we want to continue some of that great work. Complete facility assessments will start for Carnarvon Park design. Finish public safety building study and fire hall renovations. Renovate main office, improve firefighter parking, and upgrade the police station. Conduct also Oak Bay Library HVAC study, and then launch asset management community of practice and start public works yard analysis. And one item that's not on here, but David Graham and his team partner very closely with me as we direct the phase 2 of asset management. And we will be doing some facility condition indexing in coming back to council on that later in the year, probably closer to fall. So just to throw up there the changes in budget. So for the operating budget, we had a base budget of 360,000, and then inflationary increases of 10,000 or 3%. Transfer to Marina Reserve. So when we monitored the lease revenue with the lease expenses, there was a net difference, and we transfer that to reserve to maintain the property. So we had to do an adjustment there. Workstations. So this is where, with the new requests, facilities would be required to adjust possibly some of the workstations, desks, maybe some minor renovation, and that's been included in this budget. And then the other savings are the reference that you heard me say earlier around reduced energy costs. The total increase would be 8.9% from the previous year, but as mentioned, that's in part due to a revenue that we collect. So this is just a snapshot of how the budget lines up by property. And in this case, we group the lease revenue as one total. And then just to stop for a couple of moments on the capital plan, I just want to make sure you've got that there. Thank you. Here we go. So this, you'll see more coding. It's so that you can share in what we live in the financial services. So I would just want to make a quick note on the marina structural repairs. We did do an adjustment to the costing on that, but we do have it as a placeholder budget. We currently are awaiting direction in terms of timing for some of those necessary building renewal work that should be done. And so we remain at the ready and need this expenditure authority to make sure that we will be ready to, authorized to move if we need to. The other programs I would like to just highlight is that we do have an annual program, a Facilities General Capital Program, and that is deployed as necessary on all of those buildings in the portfolio for this group. In some cases, you're going to see projects that are for other departments also listed here. And one in particular that I'll draw attention to is the Public Safety Building. It is near the end of the table. And you'll see that the amounts included in the 2025 and 2026 year are primarily planning dollars. And then you can see that we've sort of earmarked a hypothetical cash flow. One thing to note and connect the dot for council is that our recently approved development cost charge and amenity cost charges will be able to cover some of this amount. Of course, we won't be able to collect it in time. Enough anyhow, but depending on design, scope, size of the building, we would want to factor that in as a part of the funding strategy. So the total capital program for 2025, as I mentioned, listed there, $4 million, and is coming from reserve. Other than the Public Safety Building, which has been earmarked as previous to come from borrowings. So with that, I'll go ahead and transition into financial services and information technology.
I'm just going to see if there's any questions at the last section.
Sure.
I see hands. Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite, then Patterson.
Thanks so very much, and through you, Chair. So I think I understand how we got the gas usage to be down by 37%, but can you just explain how we got the electricity usage down by 25%? Because I'd be very interested to hear that.
Sure, and I think I'm going to ask my colleague to jump in, Mr. Graham, because he does explain it so well.
Thank you. Welcome to the meeting, Mr. Graham.
Thank you. Can you hear me all right?
And please go ahead.
The electricity savings was generally through lighting upgrades as well as control upgrades on the HVAC systems. Some of the systems use electricity. We used to have an old electric furnace in the basement, and I should say the lower floor, and we have changed that out to a heat pump. So that resulted in energy savings related to heating.
Thank you. That's great. And then my other question was tab 6. Appendix 5, page 11. The maintenance municipal hall. I'm assuming that 129,000 is that for the replacement of the washrooms, the exterior washrooms?
Mr. Schatz.
Yes, and sorry, can you just make that reference to the amount again?
I think it says under the 2025 budget, it's $129,000. Oh, sorry. It's $129,000.
What's that?
Which page are you on?
On page
okay.
11,
Yes,
under maintenance municipal hall, under appendix 5.
Yes, thank you. I was on the capital because you had me on washrooms. We're doing a lot of washrooms. Apologies. Thank you very much for that reference. Actually, I'm going to get David Graham to jump in as well, because I think he could provide some more details than I can as he answers that the question about the number. Okay.
Mr. Graham, the maintenance for 2025 at Municipal Hall, 129,100.
Yes, that is. It's easier to explain that one as in I don't have a budget for district-wide equipment or material that we might use on multiple buildings. So those tend to get coded to the municipal hall budget, although they're used district-wide. I don't know if that answered the question clearly enough. It's a combination of accounting columns that have ended up in municipal hall budget.
Okay, there we go. Bunch of small projects. Go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I see in the budget that there is some maintenance work for the property located at 1538 Monterey. That is a growing piece of conversation, the condition of the building, the condition of the grounds around the building. And I know it is detailed in here that future planning is in conjunction with the village plan. But if the building cannot be used for anything now, and it takes more time for the village plan, I'm just, what about assessing the condition of it and coming to some sort of a recommendation on whether to demolish the building early, or, it seems odd to just keep putting in a maintenance budget for a building that is sitting empty and looking quite unattractive on the street. So I'm wondering if staff could speak to that and their thoughts about it.
Sure, sorry. Did I carry, the number for that house is $5,400. That's the... Yeah. Okay. I thought I heard you said reference a 36,000 number. I'm like, that's not the right one. I'm not sure. I think Ms. LaChance, I don't know if you want to speak to that or not. It's more of a policy decision than it is a budget decision.
It is. Thank you. Through you, Chair. I just wanted to help Council with the expenditure details to that, just to understand that even though we're holding a property in lieu of planning, so we're waiting to determine use, we still have to maintain the property to a certain degree. An example of that is that we have, in order to make sure that the property is not in disrepair, we'll have to take care of the grounds. We'll have to make sure that the heat is on, that there is no risk of squatting. And so there's going to be a basic budget that we'll need there to take care of that property until such time as we proceed with the planning outcomes.
Thank you. Anything else, Councillor Patterson?
Yes, so just as a follow-up on that then, so then it would be council's responsibility to give staff instructions if it was desired to accelerate some sort of a plan for that site, is that correct?
That's correct.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Mayor, and this is to Ms. LaChance. Because this applies throughout the plan, I'm going to ask the question now, just so that I kind of get the lay of the land. And it's about designated reserve accounts and that fund some or all of the capital work. And it's just a general question. Sometimes in the reporting material, the material being given, there's a specific reference to a fund that may be the drawdown fund for the work. And sometimes there isn't one. So the overall question is, well, the first question is, are all capital projects in this plan funded from a designated reserve account, or is there an implication that for some of these things that we're looking to debt? Because that's not clear to me. I'm sure it's very clear to you, but it's not clear to me. So that's my first question.
Mr. Chance?
Thank you. Through your chair. No, I really appreciate the question. It's an excellent one to bring up at this point, because we will be moving through a number of different departments, and I have been guilty of sharing sort of random snippets about funding, but just only to try to reinforce that use of the tables that have been provided in the appendix, that there is very much a difference between operating expenditures and then what we actually will balance to revenue at the end of the day. It is very important to keep a focus on the operating expenditures, because that's where we can really make decisions about what service levels we have, what type of costs we plan to take on. But that doesn't always correlate directly to revenue. So to your question directly, the balancing of the capital is in Appendix 6, and it would have the full balanced capital expenditure plan by department with the revenue sources. I was careful to provide that without too many other tables to distract, because it was something that I was missing from the last financial plan. It's my go-to in terms of understanding the health of our funding profile for assets, and also the work that we need to do to be able to get that capital done. So to the other part of your question, we have planned to take on borrowing in this upcoming year. The amount is 6.6 million. And the amount is primarily for storm sewer and roads programs. They are long life assets. And so when you look to debt management principles, typically those are the type of assets that you would look to issue a basic level of borrowing against. Also consistent with previous year plans, we've also earmarked borrowing for the public safety building, as well as the Carnarvon Park. So you will see that within the 5-year. Included in appendix, I'm testing myself here, there is also a debt proceeds by project. And so you'll see that it's appendix, just give me a moment, sorry. I should have it memorized, and I do, it's just because I'm on the spot. Yeah, so it's gonna be 9. Thank you. So thank you very much for the question. I'm happy to have the opportunity to explain that.
And if, just to follow up, because you mentioned it was also on my list. So with respect to debt servicing costs, how do you actually see those reflected in the 5-year plan? Are they attached to a project? Are they rolled up as a one number? That was something else that I wasn't following.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chance?
Thank you, through you, Chair. The principal and interest will be included as an expenditure line item in the consolidated financial statement, financial plan. For borrowing, typically the strategy I like to deploy is that we would get approval to proceed with major capital expenditures at this time of year. We would do the work to get that project started or get the work off the ground. And when we're reasonably assured those expenses are going to happen or have happened is when we would go to borrowing in the latter half of the year. Principal and interest does not kick in until 6 months later. And so you won't see any principal and interest in the 2025 year. And that's, it's just a small financial strategy to try to defer the cost, but still be able to proceed with project work.
Thank you. So that turnaround from the Municipal Finance Authority is really fast if you put in a borrowing request. Like you're talking about packaging even small amounts and making requests.
Through you, Chair, I think it's worth just, you know, I don't think I would articulate it as fast. It's very structured, but it is a well-known process. So, for example, if we want to borrow in the fall of 2025, there's only 2 issues per year from the Municipal Finance Authority. If we want to borrow in the fall, we would have to approve the loan authorization and have that to the regional district for the pretty much a May deadline. And then the same would apply for the spring borrowing. We would have to have our loan authorization to the regional district somewhere in around early January.
Thank you. That's everything.
You? Any other questions? Can I just, for me now, I've lost it. There was a reference in the, I've scrolled past it now. Under asset management, there was just like a reference around a community asset, community asset program or something like that. And I just wasn't familiar with the term, but now I can't find it, so I can't even ask you the question. Well, if you know what I'm talking about, you can answer the question. Otherwise, I might just come back to that when I can find it.
Yes.
Community practice. Thank you.
Yes. So community practice is part of our phase 2 asset management. So council priority project. Council is to develop the comprehensive asset management plan. And as part of phase 2, we have developed an internal community practice. That same group is connected with the regional community of practice. And so we really look to right-size our approach to asset management. So we're using best practices from other jurisdictions. We're moving together as a group to make sure that those initiatives that council has set out, we can deliver those in a reasonable amount of time. And also embed strong practices at the same time. So the community practice is the internal group that meets, and actually we've just transitioned out of phase 1 for asset management, which was renewing the strategy and policy. We're coming back to council very shortly on that. But this is an exciting time because we're moving into implementation. And so we're together as a group more. We're going to be capacity planning together, designing those initiatives and delivering to council as a group.
Thank you. I have another question that may not be answerable here tonight, but I'll try. And I'm just trying to get my head around. I know the charts that show our this is getting maybe a bit ahead. Our asset management, we've been putting the 2.5% each year in to kind of catch up to make sure that we're fully funding our assets over the lifespan. And then we're largely focused on underground assets, and I'm not as clear about where we are in terms of building asset in that asset management program. Do you have that information, sort of roughly where we are in terms of catching up to our building replacement funds?
Thank you. In response to that, Chair, we have 3 separate levies that we are including within the tax increase each year as planned, as set out in the Sustainable Infrastructure Replacement Plan. That plan sets out that multi-year increase to the levy to reach sustainable transfer levels. And so that's the 3 separate ones are, one is in general, one is in sewer, and one is in water. And so, as you mentioned, primarily related to the underground utilities. But with the infrastructure renewal amount within the general fund can be used on replacement of other assets. In terms of the full scope of the unfunded liability, the increase in the levy is intended just to establish a transfer to reserve based on our existing asset base. And there's still catch-up work to do in terms of dealing with the historical funding gap, but that's where we would look to navigate that forward right time replacement work, and then use some form of debt management to help us address those replacement needs.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't see other hands, so please continue.
That's back to me. Thank you. I will move into financial services now. Just bear with me as I transition to the right slide. Everybody will be very grateful I do that. So financial services, as I mentioned, has a number of different functions. Financial services proper, I'll call it. So the operations within finance, that'll be our tax, utility, accounts payable, accounting, reporting functions. And then we also have, and I cannot forget to mention payroll. And we also have information technology, assets and facilities management, which we just went through. Procurement, and then risk management and insurance. Just going to keep us moving here a bit. I'd just like to jump in on some of the accomplishments. So they introduced the ARO obligation standard that was adopted. There was a launch to the asset management program. We had, there's some accomplishments related to parking enforcement, which previously were reported into finance. There was a full review done of the utility billing process and policy with a number of recommendations that'll be coming back to council this year. So that was some really necessary work, and the team's very proud of having completed that. We completed the phase 1 of the asset management program. Also, in 2024, I call it a 2024 accomplishment, but we technically weren't done until 2025. But we did lead the implementation of the development cost charge and amenity cost charge bylaws with those now in place for the first time in district's history. and I look forward to including that in the financing strategies going forward. Implement, oh, sorry, that's just a regurgit, that's duplication. And just moving over to 2025, we've got AMP there twice somehow, but you can tell I'm very excited about it. We're moving into phase 2, and as I mentioned, this is a really nice time for asset management. Strategy and policy is so foundational. If you're in an organization and those statements you haven't yet been made by mayor and council, the staff will have a losing battle to meeting best practices, to implementing change, implementing systems. But we have those in place, and so the part that we get to do now is really make a difference and start making those changes right at the grassroots. I work closely with my colleagues in terms of designing what our next steps will be, and so we look forward to that being an accomplishment for us in 2025. And then we're going to come back, as I mentioned, on the utility billing. To review those recommendations. And then just on my next slide, you'll note, I didn't list it here as an accomplishment, but it should be. We're going to further refine the systems that support all of the departments with budget software implementation. And I'm just going to flip over to that now, just to help that out. It's the next slide. See, I'm pausing now to make sure I do it right. So this is the change in the operating budget, and as I just mentioned, the project that's listed here is to address budgeting software needs that we have. The amount there is $20,000, and that would be one-time in nature. And then there'd be a related additional consultancy to that project for $35,000. That entire amount isn't for the one project. It's also to improve the existing system that we have, so the two can talk together. So that would be listed on the accomplishment listing. For the base budget, there's a $2 million base budget. With inflationary increases calculated around $66,000. The additional staffing support is listed here for $64,000. And additional consultancy, as I mentioned, and budgeting software would group together to be $55,000. And then there were other savings found. And I say found, but ultimately what we were looking to do is mitigate the way with which we would do the work. So there was a software replacement line item in the IT budget, presumably to pay for things such as budgeting software, but it was an ongoing amount. And we haven't demonstrated an ongoing need to have that software. It's been unspent, so our practice of reviewing the last 3 years of actuals allowed us to see that very clearly, make that adjustment, and be able to take a more strategic approach to expense and funding. And so, as I mentioned, these will be one-time items versus ongoing. The total change would be $156,000 or 7.6%, bringing the total to $2.2 million. And just moving into capital. Mayor and council are likely aware that we use a contracted service for our network and security support. They do work quite closely with me. I have monthly regular meetings. We deploy projects to replace the infrastructure. We had a major switch replacement in the latter half of 2024, and you can see some of that similar work planned out by year over the next 5 years. Those are based on end of life, and ultimately there can be some retiming to those projects, but not by much, without having to take on higher risk levels. The other notable amount there would be the desktop phone replacement. So we on offices throughout the district, we have a phone system that's supported by TELUS. They have been trying to navigate away from that contract with us, and the hardware is end of life and very difficult to find replacement hardware for. And so it's time, it was in the previous budget and it has been carried forward. And we'll start work on that shortly after budget approval to get that work underway for 2025. So stopping there, just before I transition over to police services.
Don't see hands popping up. I had one quick question on that last slide, and that was just the regular recurring, go back one, IT project management division projects. It's just consistently 170,000 across all 5 years. What is that?
So that's a cost recovery for Donna Costin, previous deputy, and she has basically provides a number of IT services for us, but most primarily in the business analyst software deployment. And she would work on not only the projects in this budget here, but just recently she had been working on supporting in-time, payroll time attendance going in for police services. And then there's a number of others. She'll do deployment work on Tempest. And so there's somewhere in around 15 pieces of software within the roadmap, within the, the footprint. And she's able to support on all of those as we do renewal work.
My recollection of that is she's paid essentially as a percentage of the capital project as those are being rolled out. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Appleton?
Thank you, Worship, and through you to staff. Just with respect to the desktop phone replacement, I mean, is this being replaced with digital technology? It's progressively not using an actual physical phone or a desktop phone. So is this now moving into sort of the digital internet sphere?
Through you, Chair, the expectation is we will be exploring those as primary options. I think we would have to look at the costs of any of the options. Our first step will be to consider what options are available. It could just be a upgrade of the hardware under a different contract, or it could be moving to a different platform.
Thank you. Please continue.
Thank you very much. And with that, I'll pass over to Chief Shannon. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. LaChance. Your Worship, Mayor and Council, good evening. Looks like we're starting off with capital. Or maybe not. Just to recap for those that are present here this evening, the provisional budget was presented to Mayor and Council initially in November, and the revision was submitted in the end of February. The numbers that are presented in there, just a reminder, do not reflect those revised numbers, as though Ms. LaChance said earlier in her presentation that the updated revised numbers are included in the overall budget. So that being said, not speaking directly to those numbers up there, the revised numbers for those present is an increase to the Oak Bay Police Department budget of $652,700, which equates to a 10.3% increase. Any questions regarding the highlights that are presented there?
Councillor Braithwaite?
I'm thinking that this might fall into there, and under under integrated units, on page 26, in the year 2025, it goes up. It goes from 186,700 to 509,984. So it's a jump of 173%. And I'm just wondering if there could be an explanation on that, please.
Through you, the chair. Yes, there was a movement of the integrated units. So with an asterisk on our budgets that we'd moved the integrated canine services contract and the Vancouver Island Integrated Major Crime Unit contract into protective services under integrated units. So there is a forced increase there, so to speak. However, in the detailed budget reports, there was a significant increase in the operating costs for our integrated units.
Thank you for that. I don't see other questions. Back to you, Ms. LaChance. Or is there more? Please. Oh, sorry.
Moving on to 2024 accomplishments. In 2024, we delivered fraud awareness, online safety, healthy relationships, and gang awareness training to members of our community, both within the schools, presentations, residential retirement homes, and gatherings that we'd had invitation to. We developed a Vape Bite program and expanded Coffee with a Cop program. We were successful in identifying 2 suitable electric police vehicles and acquired an automated license plate reader to assist with our traffic enforcement. And part of that, the funding for the automatic license plate reader came from the province. We trained all employees and implemented our digital evidence management system, and training was completed for the Department for Fair and Impartial Bias and Awareness training. We continue to support the Regional Youth Police Camp and attended Oak Bay Teen Center and conducted traffic enforcement. Our 2025 planned accomplishments were to negotiate a new collective agreement, acquire our 5th fully marked EV patrol vehicle, establish our community support team, and launch Project Sea-Watch. Also for our planned accomplishments, to reduce residential break-ins and pedestrian injury collisions significantly. One of our planned accomplishments, which actually took place earlier this week, was to send all our female operational Oak Bay Police Department women to the Women in Police Leadership Conference in Vancouver, which was a fantastic event, and I'm looking forward to report on that later on. And to expand our partnership with Oak Bay Rec Teen Center youth programs. And currently, we open and operate the youth center Tuesdays and Thursdays at lunchtime, and we're hoping to look to fill capacity and identify resources to ensure that possibly we can expand that to after school, which is pretty exciting. We also want to ensure or do our best that all officers that are interested in becoming bike patrol trained, that's completed in this year. And we're in the process of implementing a new scheduling system, which is so far in the early stages has been very well received by our membership, and it's already making notable changes for the administrative work for our support staff. So we're already reaping some benefits from that investment. Do any questions for accomplishments past and planned?
Any questions? No, I don't think so.
Yeah. So the next few slides are structured just as they are in any other department, but I understand that Council just received the budget, so I just look for direction from the chair if we should keep moving or if you want us to go through the next few slides.
I think in the interest of time, it's almost 8 o'clock. Why don't we, if there's questions, take them now. If not, we can move on. You're right, we did just have this discussion, so.
Yes.
Okay, no, why don't we move forward then?
Okay, taking that direction, I'll go ahead and transition us over to Fire Services, passing that over to Chief McDonough.
Thank you and good evening, Your Worship and Council. So I'm pleased to introduce the Fire Services budget and confirm that we are a full-service fire department supporting interior and exterior operations. We also provide low-slope confined space and auto extrication rescue services along with hazardous materials and medical response. We also do fire prevention, inspections, and investigation along with community emergency preparedness and planning to provide a general overview of our business. We have been significantly impacted by several legislative changes that have occurred in the past few years. We are still learning and growing along with the rest of the province on how to interpret and manage and support the Emergency Disaster Management Act that has recently come into play, as well as in August of 2024, the Fire Safety Act came into play, and we're still, or it came into force, and we're still getting up to speed with that. There will be additional work coming as a result of that, which will result in bylaw changes coming back to council. And we also had to deal with the implementation of the provincial firefighter training standard, which went live in March of 2024 last year, which has had a significant operational and training impact for the department. Just to deal a little bit with some of the performance measures and statistics, since 2020, the department has seen a steady annual increase in their call volume, and over the last 3 years, we've gone from a little over 1,300 calls to just about 1,500 calls this last year. We have had some significant fluctuation in both medical aid and structural type calls, but the net result is we are having a steady increase year over year. We are also reporting out on some new data fields, which I think it would be of interest to council, which we haven't previously reported on. Primarily being fire-related injuries. So you don't need a large number of fire-related incidents to result in a significant number of fire-related injuries. So over the last 3 years, the year that we had the lowest number of reportable fires, which was 16, was the highest number of fire-related injuries we had, which was 5. So it's a pretty big number, and then the year prior to that, we actually had 6 fire-related injuries. And those are all either smoke and or heat-related. So, pretty serious. Luckily, the last couple of years, we've had a reduced number. But those are important pieces to make you aware of. And Ms. LaChance, did you want to provide the high-level overview as far as the budget highlights?
Yes, thank you. I'll pause for questions or comments before I do that.
Don't think so on there. Go ahead, please.
Okay, so the summary before you, similar to other departments, starts with the base budget of 5.6 million. Inflationary increases are identified. And then the only other item here for a change in the base budget is related to the fire staffing capacity approvals that considered a multi-year phasing. So this is as directed by council. More information is included in the package. The total amount would be an increase of 7% in the operating expenses. I'm just going to move through. Within your package, you'll be able to see the budget breakdown by division. And then we'll just take a quick look at the capital together. So we have, for 2025, somewhere in around 290,000 in planned capital expenditures. I'm going. I thought I had pressed it. Then it didn't work for me. Yeah. Oh God, guys, sorry. They're yes. Oh my goodness.
We're just helping.
They're helping. They're helping.
Nothing
Yeah.
is better help than having 4 people telling you what to do at the same time.
Okay, we're good. So, primarily they're sort of it's and bits of smaller capital replacement and equipment, but you'll see some structural training equipment necessary for operations, as well as a vehicle replacement in that listing. And with that, I'll pause just before we transition to community building and planning.
Go ahead, Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question. It is probably for Chief McDonald, and it relates to fire personal equipment on the capital plan. I just wanted to know, what drives the sort of this capital item from a cost perspective in the budget. What's the typical life? What's the expected life of a typical set of this equipment, and is it changing because regulations change or because there's innovation in the industry around the materials used? What would drive out almost $500,000 worth of cost for this equipment over a 5-year period?
Chief?
Through the chair, thank you. That's an excellent question. So personal protective equipment, just to describe it, it's our turnout gear. And then it's also helmets and structural boots, as well as it's our self-contained breathing apparatus. So all of the turnout gear and helmets all have a manufacturer's shelf life of maximum of 10 years. The $450,000 price tag you see in 2029, that is actually replacement of the department's self-contained breathing apparatus. So that is an entirely different piece, but it's related to the PPE budget.
Thank you. So that 10 years is like it's your best before date, and then you can't argue about that. You just have to do it, right?
That's correct. And what we typically see is you're lucky if you hit 10 years with our turnout gear. We have to send it to a certified cleaning agency who then have to vapor test the gear, and quite often we find it fails closer to the 7-year mark.
Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't have a chance to do the accomplishments. So if I could just briefly cover the 2024 accomplishments for fire. We did have a year that was heavily engaged in firefighter recruitment. This does have a significant impact to some of the items that Ms. Donnelly was touching on earlier, being mental health and budgetary impacts on the department. I'll get into that prior to getting into the 2025 accomplishments. But you also see that we had our new engine and ladder arrive last year, which has had a significant implementation impact on the department. That equipment essentially was about a 2-generation skip in fire technology for the department, and then the impact to implement that is not to be underscored, which also resulted in a whole redevelopment of our driver operator training program. And then, as I indicated earlier, we implemented the provincial minimum training standard, which is again a very intensive body of work, which results in job performance requirements, which are industry-wide being adopted by the department. As we've also heard, we were participating in the sorry, lost my spot. Feasibility study for the public safety building. And we also collaborated very closely with Parks and Rec and Building Department in a couple of different areas where we were able to develop very specific site requirements to support special event permits, as well as commercial cooking operations. So it really allowed permit applicants to know specifically distance requirement, flame spread rating, and inspection requirements to support those types of events up front. And then we were actually following up to actually ensure that there was follow through on what was expected. So excellent piece of work that occurred. And then as council is well aware, we were able to complete the community risk assessment, the emergency program bylaw, and then complete the Indigenous engagement requirements under our EMCR grant on a regional basis through the Local Government Emergency Planning Advisory Commission. So with the staffing changes that we were dealing with last year, we ended up having a significant challenge over the first 8 months of the year, where we were having to rely heavily on overtime. And then once we were able to start to implement the staffing plan changes, we were then able to be in a position where we're able to start considering how we can transition to a right-sized response. So just to remind council that the right-sized response is having the ability with adequate number of staff where we can have a 2-person truck respond to medical incidents rather than a 4-person truck, which keeps our fire protection capability for the municipality intact. We also, you'll be happy to hear that our overtime experience in the first 2 months in 2024 has significantly reduced compared to the first 2 months of 2025. We had over 100 overtime pieces in 2024, where compared to 2025, where we've gone down to just around 20. So that's a significant decrease, as well as a significant improvement on the mental health and work-life balance for our employees. So that, I think you get the idea of where we're going and taking advantage of the staffing plans, and happy to answer any questions you have on our items.
Thank you, Chief. Questions? Councillor Appleton?
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to the Chief. I've asked this question before, but I'm assuming that we're on the cusp of, now that we have our new ladder truck, that we're on the cusp of doing something with our old ladder truck, and I'm just wondering whether we had found a suitable and appropriate place to possibly receive a donation or something like that, that we might be able to do something positive with that old machine.
Chief?
Through the chair, we've had several vehicles that are going through asset disposal right now. So our first item is to try and circulate within the municipality. So we have been able to repurpose one of our old sedans, which has stayed within the municipality and with another department. Our ladder and our engine they're prepped and they're ready to go, and we're trying to dispose of them through provincial asset disposal. And we're just waiting for, I believe, finance to write a report that will allow them to go on disposal. And they're currently in secure storage behind the fire hall and ready to go.
Thank you. Anything else? Just for my, through myself to the Chief, the staged increase in staffing, can you just remind us where we are in that process? When, what year, and how many people per year, and what's the total that are coming in?
Thanks, Your Worship. So ultimately, we came before council January of last year, and there was support for a 6-year plan. This is year 2 of that, so it concludes in 2029. It had a front-end loaded package where it was 0.75 in the first 2 years of a lift, and then the remaining 4 years at 0.56 each. We didn't have a specific head count per year, but ultimately we were adding 8 bodies over that 6-year period, and we brought on a net 2 last year, and we were hoping to bring on 2 this year. However, we are flexible.
Subject to budget approval, obviously. Thank you for that. Ms. LaChance?
Excellent. Thank you. Through you, Chair, I'll move us into building and planning. And I'll look to my colleague, Mr. Bowl, who I think is online and ready to present.
Thank you. And I might just note that, how many more departments are we doing? 1, 2 more?
3. So community building and planning, engineering and public works, and then parks, recreation, and culture.
Okay. Just noting the time here. Once we've completed these, I'm going to then open it up for public comment. Just so anybody who's watching or listening who wishes to, you may want to come into the Zoom or be prepared internally if you have any comments. We'll invite you to speak before we go on to sort of getting some direction and additional questions to go forward. So go ahead, Mr. Sorry, you were handing it over to Mr. Bowl, is that correct? And welcome, Mr. Bowl.
Thank you, Mayor, and sorry I couldn't be there tonight. I had some other commitments already previously for this week, and actually also a little bit under the weather, so probably better not with you. Yeah, for the community building and planning services, our 3 areas are long-range land use planning and projects, council priority projects mostly, but also the processing of development applications and building permits, and bylaw compliance. And since recently, that includes parking and animal control as well, and business licensing. There's a budget table there that I believe Ms. LaChance will clear. Is that correct? Or
Yes, absolutely. I'm just actually just in the essence of time, happy to cover the subsequent financial tables. Mr. Bowl, if you could move into your accomplishments.
That's good. Next slide, please. Thank you. Yeah, let me see. Looking back at last year, a lot of focus, of course, on the Housing Action Program, HAP, which included particularly introducing the infill housing program with changes to the zoning bylaw. We also supported the finance department with the development of the AC and DCC programs. We completed an interim housing needs report, and we also did a report on the progress on the housing target order. Preparation started as well on the 5-year review for the OCP, Official Community Plan and Zoning Bylaw update. That is required to be done this year. And as a fourth item, we also were happy to welcome a senior planner for climate action to our team. And meanwhile, we also were able, with the help of consultants, to introduce and update our zero carbon step code requirements and introduce energy step code in the building bylaw. And finally, we did participate in climate action initiatives, completed consultation on blasting regulations, and also made changes to the process for development approvals. Looking at next year then, our planned accomplishments continue to be centered around housing. We're working on other housing action project this year. Let me see. That includes the Official Community Plan and Zoning Bylaw update, but also the optimization of development approval processes. And we're also still wrapping up some further changes to the infill housing project. Second item listed there is to complete the Ellen Cassidy Design Awards process, and the blasting regulation will be finalized this year as well. We're going to continue with introducing e-apply options, so a digital and online option to apply for building permits. And the home-based business review, something that we did complete as well last year. It's earmarked to be included in the Official Community Plan review. And then finally, we hope to also turn our minds to some more minor updates, policy updates. The CAC, the Community Amenities Contributions Policy, comes to mind, and possibly other bylaws. Next slide. And that's the table for Ms. Lachance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bull. Please go ahead.
Thank you, through your chair. So I will just skip over these and circle back to them. Just a few notes for council here. The change in the operating budget, you'll note, is somewhere in around 188,000 or 9.4%. It's primarily attributable to the 1.5 FTE staffing ask, with a small amount due to inflation. As I mentioned, the total 9.4% increase will result in total operating budget or operating expenditures of 2.2 million. For building and planning, throughout last year, heading into next year, there's been some revenue forecasting work done to develop this budget, anticipating activity levels to change, anticipating what kind of timing of bylaws, timing of housing action program deliverables. And so you will note, just heading back for you guys to the revenue. So you will note that there is an increase in revenue forecasted of 300,000. Or a 30% increase, and those would go to offset the expenditure increases that you'll see on the second table, where you'll see the 9.4 again that we've just walked through. So you'll see a net line in this budget in your appendices, as well as the table in the presentation. I'll pause there for questions before moving on to engineering.
Councillor Watson.
Thank you. I just have one question, please, for Ms. Lachance. Or it may be from, well, probably it's for Ms. Lachance. There's a note somewhere, I made a reference to it myself, I can't find it anymore, but about the funding for the senior planner, the climate action planner, that this was initially funded out of the local government climate action program. And I just wanted to know what's with a note, this is something like still that we're expecting ongoing annual funding for this. What's the expectation of that going really further forward? I'm just wondering when that might actually become ours to fund.
Mr. Chance?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I don't have an answer to that question today. I do know that we've received money in advance for the next couple of years. And so we do have a reserve balance if you are looking at the reserve schedules. And you'll see that the recently approved climate action program will be funded directly from there, including the senior planner.
Thank you. Any other questions? My question on this one was just that hearkening back to an earlier conversation, this has a budget matching 2024 budget for deer management in the community building and planning. So I'm not sure why it's in building and planning. I don't remember it being there before. But is that money that's actually allocated for deer management that we might be able to use for the deer management? I'm not sure to ask that question of Ms. LaChance.
So I'll just start off with, in the event that a program is established and moves forward, we need to ensure that there's expenditure authority so that we can proceed. My understanding is that this division was recently reorganized into community building and planning. So that's why you're seeing it here to your question, Mayor, about why it's here. And then I'll go ahead and pass over to Ms. Bay for more background. With me being new, she'll be better to answer that. Thank you.
No, you're not trying to pass the deer buck, are you? Ms. Bay?
To doe or not to doe. The deer management piece that you see there, that was a decision council made a number of years ago to provide funding in case the province operationalized the application of immunocontraception. We're still awaiting that announcement from the province. We don't know whether we will or won't get that kind of permission. So it's really a reflection there from a council decision a number of years ago, the operationalization piece.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just trying to turn this into an actual money question then. Is the 51,000 there available to help fund the deer, or is that not? I see it in this budget, in the 2025 budget, so it looks like it is. Ms. Bay?
Your Worship, that's a council governance decision.
Right. But it's currently in the budget as I see it, it's not?
It's currently in the budget, and as I understand it, has yet to have a developed program and cash flow.
Okay, so this is looking forward to an operational model. Got it. Thank you so much for that clarification. Councillor Patterson?
I'm sorry, I'm sneezing here. It's hay fever season. Anyways, just further on the deer management, the amount that is in here, now I know Esquimalt does also have a deer management program. Would this be comparable to what Esquimalt allocates for deer management? Do we know that? Do we have a feel for that?
Ms. Bay?
Thank you, Your Worship. I do not know what Esquimalt is paying. I know from UWSS that Oak Bay has gotten a good deal in the past in terms of what we were paying relative to Esquimalt, but I can't confirm the exact numbers. I can say that from the perspective, I just lost my thought. Sorry.
My understanding is it's less than what Esquimalt is paying currently, but it's also, yes.
So just to follow up on that, it says deer management. I'm not sure if we're not going with the UWSS, what would be our program of deer management under community building and planning?
Yeah, I think there is none at this point. Ms. Bay?
Your Worship, there isn't any at this point where we can't operationalize the program without the provincial government allowing us to operationalize it. So it's really, it's been sitting there waiting for a provincial government announcement.
You go to that rabbit hole. Back to you, Ms. LaChance.
Thank you very much. With that, I'll move on to engineering services and pass over to Mr. Rennick to make his presentation.
Welcome, Mr. Rennick.
Thank you very much, through the mayor. I just want to start by saying that I have spoken to this body at Financial Plan many times, but this is the first year that I have the honor to do so as the Director of Engineering and Public Works, and I'm immensely proud of the hard work of the men and women who look after our municipal infrastructure. Water mains and sewers are not exciting, but their proper function is very important to human health and safety, and it also protects the district against a significant amount of risk associated with claims from anything from trips and falls to backups, property damage. So that was just a little plug for my department, and now I'd be happy to advance to the accomplishments slide. In 2024, the department was very pleased to have delivered on major capital works projects through an expansion of construction tenders and project management oversight. So that's managing external contractors as opposed to our own forces. In particular, we were very pleased to launch the storm sewer and water main replacements in Humber Catchment in the Uplands, which is underway. We hired a utility maintenance coordinator who kind of sits in between the engineering and public works departments and helps us prioritize and track the good work that we're doing maintaining our assets. We finalized another batch of key condition assessments on our infrastructure, such as the pavement condition assessment, which has to be conducted about every 10 years. We also presented 2 state of the infrastructure reports to council, where we were able to bring some light to council and the public to some of the challenges that we face in maintaining our critical infrastructure. We initiated the replacement of streetlights in Humber Catchment after a fairly significant consultation process on determining the closest match for the existing streetlights. And for the first time, we entered into a maintenance agreement with the District of Saanich, which clarified our obligations around our boundary highways, primarily Foul Bay Road. In 2025, we plan to present an updated capital works plan, which will identify key projects and will also cast for council's consideration a risk-based approach of essentially why do we choose the projects that we do, and that we are trying to get basically the most effective use of our money to mitigate major risks. We will continue advancing our capital project delivery. We have recently hired a manager of engineering capital projects who has brought a lot of great ideas to our team and is working on helping us develop our procedures and our standards. We will continue working on maintenance management. We've been primarily focusing on procedures around critical infrastructure in the water distribution network. That's been going really well, and I'm very proud of that work. And of course, we will continue with our core work, which is the repairs and maintenance to all of our critical infrastructure.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rennick, and welcome as director. Ms. Lachance.
Thank you very much. So to present to council the change in the Engineering and Public Works operating budget, you have a base budget from the 2024 year of 6.5 million. There are increases for inflation, increase related to a garbage contract that council has previously been briefed on, additional staffing support as requested as part of those new request items, and also previously considered by council in the infrastructure report in number 2, and back in November and December, and the related costs for the equipment pool. And then there's some additional safety training that's also been included this year. The overall increase is the 10% increase in operating expenditures, but with some user fees, those costs would be offsetted from taxation. I'm just going to move on to the capital program, and then possibly invite my colleague to jump back in. I think sorry, I'm just going to keep going here till we get there. And this is quite small. My apologies. There is no way to fit the larger capital programs on the slide. So I am hoping you have located it in your packages and can see the number of projects that are underway. Many will be familiar to council because the amounts in some part are being carried forward. I will at this point invite my colleague, if he's comfortable, to speak to any new items.
Back, Mr. Rennick.
Thank you very much. Through the mayor, as Ms. LaChance mentioned, most of these are recurring capital programs such as road reconstruction and sewer rehabilitation. There's a couple of minor items that are new that I would like to call council's attention to. The first one is the beach access stair rehabilitation. So that's looking at all of the staircases for getting to public beach accesses. There's approximately 40 of them around the district, and many of them are in quite poor condition and are at imminent risk of future tripping hazards. So this is the start of a 5-year program looking to do critical maintenance activities to essentially spruce up these accesses. There's also a capital request for replacement of the underground fuel tanks at the Public Works Yard, which are used for refueling of all district fleet vehicles, not just Public Works. And there is a small request for a sidewalk at the north side of Firefighters Park, which will allow connectivity from a newly installed crosswalk to the playground. And we think that will be an excellent addition to that location that will help the public more safely access the playground without having to walk through an active parking lot.
Thank you very much. Yes, we have questions. Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thanks very much. Could you just explain, because the numbers are so close on this page, the active transportation program is $832,000 and the active transportation new infrastructure is $832,800. So can you just explain for anybody who's listening what the difference between those two are, please, or is?
I'm sorry, could you please provide me a reference to a page number?
Actually, it's on your, it's on page 53.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. The original active transportation program was formally referred to as Transportation Safety Improvements. That program was essentially combined and renamed. This is looking at making replacements of existing assets, so areas where infrastructure already exists, such as upgrades to a signalized intersection that was already signalized. The new infrastructure program is basically to build things that we did not already have, so adding protected lanes or other facilities that are not replacements. It's, I don't want to say coincidental that the amounts are so close, but there's not really a better way to explain it. They are distinct amounts. It's just fairly coincidental how close they are to each other.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure anybody who's reading this wouldn't go, oh, there's a mistake that's in there twice, but I just wanted to just clarify that. And then the only other question I have is on page 45. At the very bottom, it's the curb drops installed, and it says in 2024 we did 18, but in 2025 we're only going to be doing 2 to 4, and I'm assuming that's because we don't have that many curb drops to be installed. Would that be a correct assumption?
Mr. Rennick?
Through the mayor, I would say that there are a lot of curb drops that could be installed, and our amount of curb drop installation in a year really kind of waxes and wanes depending on what area our concrete crews are focusing on. If we have a year that's more broken panel or trip hazard heavy versus a year that's more curb drop heavy, it's really one of those indicators that it's difficult to see progress on a year-to-year basis, and it would be nice to kind of look at it on an average basis.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Watson and then Councillor Smart.
Thank you. Just a few questions. One has to do with the new beach access stair rehab, and I wondered, what about the other staircases? There must be quite a few others, and I wondered why they were not bundled in here too, or what's the plan for them? The ones that don't go down to beaches.
Mr. Rennick?
Through the mayor, the condition assessment was primarily focusing on the beach access stairs because most of the beach access stairs are in very difficult places to access. They're often at the end of a long trail or kind of in out-of-the-way places. Other public stairs on public rights-of-way, I actually don't think we have that many of that wouldn't be considered either a park asset or a facilities asset. The only few that come to mind are, for example, the section of Brighton between Hampshire and Roslyn. I don't think it's as large of a problem as the number of beach access stairs. I also think those stairs are in better shape.
Great, thank you. And I just wondered if you could remind us, please, Mr. Rennick, the maintenance, the preventive maintenance team that is part of the new request and proposal for 2025, is that a team of 5 or 6?
Rennick?
Through the mayor, there's a request for 6 full-time equivalent staff this year, and it's actually a team of 4 and a team of 2.
Thank you. I have Councillor Smart, then Patterson.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to Director Rennick. Had a question with regards to electric fleet planning coordination. I noticed it was brought up in corporate services that there would be some work done on electric fleet planning, but it wasn't clear to me if that was going to be impacting engineering and public works, and I didn't see it in the 2025 work plan, so I just wondered if that is part of the work that might be happening in 2025 to move forward some of the electric fleet planning in engineering and public works. Thank you.
Mr. Rennick?
Through the mayor, there's not a defined project for looking at fleet electrification. However, part of what we're looking at in the facilities plan when we look at changes to the public works facility is do we have the capacity to charge electric vehicles there, which we currently do not. It's also kind of a longer term idea of, as we are replacing vehicles, are there either hybrid options or electric options? A lot of the pieces in our fleet, there are not. However, certainly I could see that in the future, particularly with things like pickup trucks, that there are beginning to be attractive electric options. So we don't have a defined program for that at this moment in time, but it's always something that that's on our radar.
Thank you.
And
Go ahead, Mr. Chance.
And if I just may add that the recently received climate action plan by council would have referred to some preliminary work around addressing policy that then would eventually impact more than only engineering and public works.
Thank you for that. Anything else, Councillor Smart?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mayor, to Director Rennick. Yeah, very excited to hear about the path to the playground for firefighters park, and I just wondered, would engineering potentially be considering accessibility in that plan for the pathway, just acknowledging that strollers and walkers and such might have trouble on a gravel or chip trail. Just wondered if that had been considered.
Mr. Rennick?
Yes, through the mayor. That project is really in its infancy. This is essentially just a budgetary ask, and more detailed planning, which could certainly take accessibility into consideration, would follow should council approve the funding request.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Through you, Mayor, to Director Rennick. I'm just looking again at the 2025 planned accomplishments. Very exciting list. The one question I had, and it may be more appropriate to follow up on Monday night, but I just noticed it was a design only for the Henderson and Haltane active transportation cycling facilities. Does that mean that the construction of the Henderson and Haltane active transportation will not be occurring in 2025? nor the community engagement for future bikeways. If you could clarify, thank you.
Some of that's in your bailiwick, Mr. Rennick.
Yes, thank you very much. Through the mayor, council has not given direction at this time as to whether to proceed with those projects. However, as you mentioned, they are on the agenda for March 10th, this coming Monday. So essentially, what was written in the planned accomplishments was just to be consistent with the direction that we had received at that time. As for the engagement on the broader plan, I'm not sure how we missed it as a planned accomplishment because that has been directed by council, and we can certainly look to include that in a revised version of this plan.
Anything else?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to Director, and just one last question, and I know I've asked this the last couple of years when we've seen the budget, but is it possible under our performance measures, statistics, and service levers to please include improved bikeways as one of the measures that we're reporting out on? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I guess this is for engineering, but new fire hydrants. The previous 2 years we only had replaced 3 each year. This year it's up to 18. I know that's a very, very small percentage of the entire network of fire hydrants. But I'm just wondering if we are increasing the replacement because of just good maintenance and planning for this, or if there is in fact, if this is an indicator of an increasing age and wear factor that could potentially affect future years.
Go ahead, Mr. Rennick.
Through the mayor, those 18 fire hydrant replacements is essentially being opportunistic. It's because there's a lot of new water main being installed, and when you install new water main, you also install new fire hydrants. It's not a reflection of the state of our fire hydrants. We do have essentially one dedicated person in Public Works who regularly maintains and services all of our fire hydrants and can identify defects that need to be proactively replaced. But I wouldn't read into significant defects with our fire hydrants.
You? Don't see other hands from anybody else on my list. Just for my clarification, if I'm looking at engineering and public works operating budget on page 49, it has additional staffing report of just really of like 181,000. So that's not reflecting the team of 4 and the team of 6. Where is the operating impact of the additional team showing up in our engineering and public works budget on these pages? Ms. LaChance?
Yes, thank you. To Chair, I think we both can answer that question equally, Mr. Rennick and I. So in part, the staffing costs were included within the utility rate bylaws in December, both water and sewer. And then the remaining portion is here within the general fund engineering budget.
Is that what the additional staffing support is?
Correct, yes.
So, Mr. Rennick?
Yes, I also just wanted to add that aside from those staff being partially funded by the utilities, also work that they will be doing will free up other employees who can then do more work on capital. So that's another way that the overall impact of those 6 new employees is mitigated, the amount that actually impacts taxation.
Thank you for that. Ms. LaChance, back to you. One more department to go, I think.
Back to me, thank you. I'll help transition us into Parks, Recreation and Culture, our last department for the evening. In order to introduce that, I'll pass that over to Ed Robertson.
Welcome back, Mr. Robertson.
Thank you. I felt much more qualified to answer the last set of questions. But Mr. Rennick did such a good job, I didn't even reach for the mic once. Anyways, happy to be here, learning a lot about this new department. My partner, Ms. Atkinson, knows a lot more about it with her history, so I'll take you through some. We're going to go back and forth and talk about the accomplishments together. For 2024, actually over to you for the first one.
Thanks. Thank you through you, Your Mayor. It's hard to walk in after 4 weeks and speak to a budget you didn't develop, but staff have been amazing, supportive, and I'm pleased to be here with the group. In terms of 2024 accomplishments, prior to the previous director leaving, he brought to you the economic analysis report, which did a full review of all of the fees and charges in different cost categories for the department. We're working now with staff to work through that and bring forward some revisions and reporting with the fees and charges bylaw in June. So that was a key accomplishment.
The concept was approved for design for the new building at Carnarvon Park, as you all know. And in parks, we hired a new arborist, and in the rec, an inclusion programmer. The floating boardwalk at Uplands Park was started in 2024 and is almost complete. We upgraded the playgrounds at Henderson, Kiwanis, and Windsor Park, which is almost complete. I think we're just days away from that. We also secured funding for tree purchases, a grant from BC Hydro, and also critical environmental protection for rare and endangered plants, and launched new software for licensed care programs.
There's a long list in your binder, so these are highlights. But staff are very proud. Last year they hosted the second Pride Swim that's gone over very well. They did install hearing assistive technology at Monterey Center and continue to work closely with the Friends of Monterey, who changed their mandate last year, and the Monterey Center and Oak Bay Rec took on the clubs underneath that new model, and so there was a lot of transition. The Friends are continuing to work very hard to support the center in their fundraising and donation activities, so we're working with them on that. And those are the key accomplishments, but not all. Oh, I get to talk about planned accomplishments. I think I touched on this already, with the economic analysis. We'll be bringing that forward shortly with a report to council. Also behind the scenes working on the terms of reference for the Parks Rec and Culture Master Plan. The plan is to have that terms of reference done before our replacement gets here, so that we can they can quickly move that forward and get it out to RFP and selection of consultant.
We are also looking to undertake playground upgrades at Lafayette and Quimper Parks. As I mentioned earlier, completing the Uplands Boardwalk, and also undertaking enhancements at the Windsor Park Pavilion.
And staff behind the scenes are supporting Mayor and Council with the Victoria Cougar Century Celebration event, helping to support organized logistics. There's a lot of detailed planning work that goes into it, as many of you will know, and that's happening at the end of this month. Also with, this is in the final year of working through an Island Health Safety and Resiliency grant, which has helped with training and development and dealing with mental health issues has been extremely valuable, and the gradually reopening of the childcare spaces as we get enough staff online.
We're also going to be undertaking renovation to Monterey Center early this summer, dealing with the main reception area, and there'll be a shutdown for that period. Replacing HVAC systems in various buildings, and we're also looking at the need in the future to restructure the maintenance group as we look to Carnarvon coming on board and other challenges within the maintenance field. And lastly, adding additional artwork through the community and different events that are going on in the arts and culture field. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Atkinson. Mr. Robertson, welcome back to you, Ms. Chance.
Thank you very much. I will put up the summary of changes for the operating budget for Parks, Recreation, and Culture combined. I have to apologize, just like the accomplishments could only fit 5. We've only teased out a couple of items here. My recommendation to council is to use the detailed variance analysis of budget year over year. Those would be on page 66 and 67 in your package. I have been very impressed by the amount of activity that staff at all levels within the Parks and Recreation Department get involved in the annual planning process in the fall to develop their draft plan and take responsibility for all of these separate cost centers that you're seeing here. So a lot of thought has gone into developing these budgets. As mentioned, the total operating expenses have a recovery through fees and charges. We're closely monitoring the rate of recovery with the goal to return to pre-COVID levels, which were closer to 70%. The improvements have been made in revenue fees and charges revenue increases, in part in activity, and also rate changes as a result, in part, to the economic analysis. But there's still a ways to go to reach that pre-COVID level. We will be running out of the one-time COVID restart funding. We didn't use as much as we needed to for 2024, so there was still an amount available to carry forward. But we will have to again contemplate the impact to taxation in 2026 and beyond if we maintain that previous target level. With that, I'll move into the capital and just make a few notes for council. And a robust capital program that covers a number of pages in your package. There is a summary level that starts on the first page, and it may be a tad confusing because the first breakdown or detailed section is appended to the total summary level. But I do encourage you to take a look at that. The recreation as well as parks, but primarily.
Slide over to the capital.
Yeah, thank you. Yep. It's so small I couldn't see it up there. It's so small. Sorry, I lost my track there, but was happy for the help, Mayor. The capital programs are supported by a 25-year equipment replacement equipment replacement and building replacement needs. And so when you are seeing the timing of capital in this plan, it is based on those longer term plans. In terms of highlighting some of the major projects, I think that you'll see some dedicated investments going into each of the key recreation facilities, notably Monterey, Carnarvon, and then also I want to say Henderson, but Windsor, I believe, is where that other project is in 2025. And did I get it right, Ed? Nice. Thank you. And so when we look at the supporting the capital program for Parks and Recreation, there is a significant amount of activity in addition to a significant operating budget. We do try to support from my administrative function, recognizing that fact, and have been making improvements, as I mentioned, in the financial system to help support this team execute on this capital program. So with that, brings us to the end of this section with the department, so we'll pause for questions there.
Great, thank you. I'll take questions on this section, then I'll go to the public for any comments or questions for this evening, and then I'll come back to this table for direction. I might actually just, I was trying to keep us to 2.5 hours or 3 hours, but we're going to make it. Can I get a motion to extend for half an hour? Moved. Seconded, thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed, none opposed? Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you so much. A couple of things. Great to see the number of visits increasing by so much from last year to this year. That's like 45,000, an increase of 45,000. That's wonderful. The municipal trees planted on private lands, I'm on page 62, went from 216 in 2023 to 2,201 in 2024. That's pretty amazing. So I don't know how that happened, but yay. So please pass along our thanks to the Parks Department for that. And then the other, on this same page, I think it's really worthy to note the number of volunteer hours that we receive from our community, because if we had to put those man hours into our community, the cost would be exorbitant and we would never be able to afford to have all of these things done. So we owe a gratitude of thanks to the people who volunteer within our community, and to the Parks Department for actually managing a lot of that as well. So I think that kudos to our volunteers. My questions are on page 66 and 67. Under the food services, again, it's great to see that the food services seems to have increased really, really well from previous years. And I'm wondering if there's any comment on that, or what, if you would know anything about how that has come about. Thank you.
Ms. Atkinson?
Thank you, through you, your Mayor. I'm sorry. Yeah, we were just talking about this today, actually, and I think the food services is an area that Oak Bay should be very proud of. It's a very active area. It's engaging for people. It's in many ways a recreation service itself. And with the event series that's going on, there's continued engagement, and they've expanded back into the evening hours. They now have enough staff. They can manage that, and so it's a very busy area, and they're still working towards complete 100% cost recovery, but the cost recovery as it currently sits is far better than any I've seen anywhere else. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I would imagine that we still are going to be shutting down the food services in the summer, like we normally do, to utilize that space for summer camps, correct?
That is correct, yeah.
Thank you. And then my other question in this area was around the sailing, because I see that under the sailing on page 67, that there's a percentage change of 120%. So perhaps we can touch on that.
I'll do my best. It's actually not sailing anymore. Sailing was under an older program. It's now a contract with, it's with Ocean River Sports. And so what you're seeing is a reflection of that contract. It used to be, in that area, it was break even, and now there's a revenue share. So that's the difference.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you. Other questions for staff for agriculture? Go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you. And on page 69, could you just refresh my memory as to what the Oak Bay Rec Center parking lot rehabilitation options we're looking at?
This one Mr. Robertson has.
It's so much like engineering, I just jump right in here. Yeah, the upper parking, last year, the lower parking lot was resurfaced, so the upper parking lot, we're looking just to do minimal work in there. There's some broken curbs from snow clearing, and some areas that are pretty rough, so looking at just doing a light touch on there for this year as we wait and anticipate the work on Bowker Creek design in the future to be moving forward. So it's really trying to keep it all together so that it's all safe.
Thank you. And able to host ball hockey tournaments, apparently. Go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, perhaps to Director Robertson. I'm just wondering what the council directed report on providing free bus passes for Life Pass users. I don't know if that lives within Parks and Rec or if it lives more in corporate services, but I didn't really see it anywhere. So I just wondered if where that project was living. Thank you.
Ms. Atkinson.
It's in engineering.
Mr. Reddick.
I don't have an update on that at this time. We are aware of the direction that council had provided, but we do not currently have a timeline for when that will be coming back to council.
Thank you. All right. Don't see other questions. So anybody who wishes to come and speak to council, you can ask questions, you can make comments, everything is welcome. If you're online, you can, in the Zoom call, you can hit *9. If you're calling into the 855 number on the agenda, you'll see there you hit the *9 to unmute. Such a small crowd. Thank you for coming forward, sir, and speaking to us. The process here is we just need to hear your name and your municipality residence, and then you're free to ask questions or just make a comment.
Good evening, Mayor and council members, senior staff. My name is Dan Mooney. I live up on Allenby Street. Relatively new resident to Oak Bay. 2 years my wife and I now have lived here, but I just wanted to provide, I guess, a little bit of comments, and I'll start by saying that I want to support the good work of the staff, and I know that the rate is well above inflation, and these aren't particularly easy times, but I see this tax increase, and I'm going to suggest that it should be supported as a prudent investment in our community, and there's nothing more important to us than our home. I'd like to stress, I guess, what I really like to hear tonight was a lot of action items. There's been some studies. We back onto Carnarvon Park, and before we bought, we had a look at the old study, and then we saw the new study, and we've got an engineer now leading the Parks Department, so I'm expecting action-oriented results, and I look forward to that seriously. I want to say I fully support the asset management based priority system, and I know we're early in it in Oak Bay, and it was very attractive to us when we looked at buying it. It's fiscal responsibility right from PSAB 3150 a few years ago to where we are now with condition assessments and so on. I think it really supports prudent fiscal investments. That builds onto this lowest life cycle cost for a given service level or risk. So if we know what our residents want to, the standards that they want to have and what risk we're prepared to tolerate, then it's quite easy to go through and look at the lowest life cycle cost to achieve that. And sometimes that means spending more money today to save money tomorrow. Which leads me on to this capital consideration. I don't know if it's in the budget, but if it's not, I would really encourage it. And if it is, I think it should be maybe highlighted a bit more. And that is that with every capital project comes what I call an OBI, or an operating budget impact. And quite often they're positive, and it means that we're building new infrastructure and we need money to then maintain it in a good state of repair. But sometimes it can actually be a negative OBI. For example, when you're converting electrical systems, somebody mentioned a heat pump earlier, converting streetlights from high pressure sodium to LED can actually save you money on an operating side that can help finance it. But I think those two, the capital and the OBI, need to go hand in hand. And then the final comment I have is I would really encourage staff and council to look at an early budget approval. I know the legislation is May 15th and a whole bunch of municipalities tuck in there right under the line. That is challenging in terms of procurement, in that you get out to the industries when we call it contractors' pencils are dull and the numbers tend to go up. An alternate to trying getting early approval is to maybe advance design in this year and then construction in next year and have it pre-ready, ready to go in the can, so that shovel ready, so that you can get out to industry. So with that, I'll just say we're really happy to be residents of Oak Bay. We are not shy about investing in our community, and we think we support the good work that's being done. And I'd encourage you to be action-oriented and aggressive. I know some of my neighbors might be disowning me now, but that's okay. It's good to have debate, and I believe in what I've said. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Mahoney, and I might just get staff to comment on the OBI and pieces as well. My fear is now we're going to have a PVC pipe building in Windsor Park if we have the engineer driving it. So I would actually say that one of the actually, no, I'll just leave it there. I'll leave those comments. Do you want to speak to being able to reflect? We have talked about it many times, but being able to reflect the operational cost impact. Certainly, we've talked about it a lot with the replacement of some of these older pipes and things, instead of trying to reduce our maintenance costs in the long run or medium run. Ms. LaChance?
Yes, thank you. So as part of our asset management strategy, it is to include operating costs of capital within our decision-making materials. So as decisions will come forward to council on material amounts, they would also get to see the operating cost of capital going forward. Because we would embed it in that decision-making timing, there is an opportunity to build up that business case further. We haven't yet received direction to do that, and it's not explicitly referenced in the asset management strategy, but that is part of my hope in leading that program, that we would, at the onset, identify a business case related to capital that would allow us to identify some of those positive offsets, as well as the ongoing full life cycle costing.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Bundy. Next, please.
Hi, I'm Maggie Knight, Oak Bay. I live down by Lafayette Park. I'm sorry, I feel like I came last year and I asked some questions of Mr. Robertson, and now I also have the questions for him, even though he's in a different chair, so sorry. I was wondering about, swimming lessons in particular, but sort of in general, the capacity. I was trying to, if you are around parents of young children, anytime there is registration, there's a whole lot of grumbling about how everything books up, particularly for swimming, in about 3 to 7 minutes. And anecdotally, people talk about like asking staff where they are on wait lists, and that there's about like twice as many people on the wait list as actually will get into like the 4-person class. And so I'm wondering if there are any metrics, and if that gets reported, if that's like an indicator of how to meet, because I can imagine that's only going to get worse with the closure of the Crystal Pool and the YMCA pool downtown. Obviously, it's a regional shortage. So I'm wondering what we know about that, and grumbling parents is not particularly fun. So how can we be more useful and know that you're doing your best and trying?
Thank you, Ms. Knight. Ms. Atkinson, is that a thing to put to you?
Some of the questions we don't yet know the answers to, relative to the impact of Crystal Pool. Certainly the swimming lessons at Oak Bay, they fill up quickly. They are full. The ability, the capacity to take on more would be particularly challenging. So there's going to be some regional dialogue in terms of how some of that impact might be accomplished, but realistically, that's a number of years out yet. So that's all we know from the city at this point in time, and there's supposed to be further consultation. The second part, all I can answer at this point without doing more delving into it is the capacity swimming lessons is, I think the staff are trying always to be creative and look at the balance of programming in the spaces to see how they can meet the ongoing demands or changing needs. And they continue to do that the best they can, so.
A very detailed answer, Ms. Knight. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
I did have one other question, which is just as relates to the sort of recovery percentage in Parks, Recs, and Culture. This is not at all my area of expertise, but I'm wondering if, are there models elsewhere that look at a bit more of a sliding scale or based on ability to pay? Because certainly some of the programs are relatively expensive for families, like Music Together is quite expensive, but I'd say the swimming lessons are lower cost than a lot of other comparable activities in the city, like gymnastics or other things. Well, I mean, swimming is more important because we live by water and we want our children not to drown. But in general, I think a lot of families could pay somewhere, but of course some can't. And so, how do you preserve access while increasing cost recovery? I'm sure this is a well-documented issue, but I'm interested in what's been explored. And sorry, I know you're brand new, so you probably can't speak to what's been explored, but.
Ms. Atkinson?
It is, in order to respond, I feel I would have to go back and discuss it more depth with staff. I know there's the leisure access pass, and I know it's changed since I was active in the industry. So I'd want to get more details on that and how that may or may not address sort of the floating scale that she's referring to. So.
Great.
Thank you.
And one last question.
Of course.
Any idea, you mentioned trying to reopen childcare spaces. Any sense of how many, what the scale of that is?
Ms. Atkinson, you might as well answer that into the microphone.
Sorry, I said no.
I know we're trying to
I'd
hire
have to
like
come
crazy,
back.
but I also do know that we have updated our registration process.
Yes.
So that at least it's online and not people lining up all night to try and get in, so.
Yeah.
Mr. Robertson?
Thank you.
There we go. Through you, Mayor, I just got an update from Mr. Hidley, manager of Parks. The question about the trees, the amazing amount of trees we planted in 2004, there's an extra digit in there. It's actually just over 200. So, yes, well, we'd like to be able to be there someday, but not yet. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much. We are then, I don't see any hands online. If anybody is online and struggling, if I see a hand pop up and we're still here, I'll make every effort to get to you. We do try and make sure we make this as open as possible. With that, back to this table, we have we've had a presentation from our different departments. I think this is a chance to kind of look at the whole and perhaps if there's questions or scenarios that we want to see brought back as options, I think this is the time to do it. I know there's a number of positions in here, and we may want to ask to sort of to consider what it would look like for maybe some portion of those, if there's people who wish to kind of highlight some of those. If there's anything else that affects operational costs you might want to look at, we can look at some of those. It's not to give final decisions at this point, but really to make sure that we have all the options on the table and really understand those options as we go into next week. Ms. LaChance, just so we have a good sense of how we're going to go through the process next week, maybe you can just outline that for us. Are we sort of coming right back here and then just having a discussion, or we have a structured approach to this where we're walking through the ads, or how would you like to do that?
Just given our progress tonight, which I think has been excellent, thank you everyone for allowing us to move through that presentation together. I do have a few slides that can bring us back at the next session. They relate to funding, reserves, debt management, and then it nicely brings us back to taxation revenue and the increase year over year. As well as any, of course, items from an operating expense service level policy that council wishes to take a look at. So we can, I can warm us up.
Okay, that sounds great. So maybe what I should focus tonight on is if there's anything that people would like to see that are sort of more, a little bit more complicated, that might require people to go away and sort of think about operational impacts or things of that nature, those would be good points to raise tonight so that we can come back to those next week well prepared. Go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Yeah, thank you. Through Mayor to Ms. LaChance, I wondered, is there an opportunity with the new structure that we looked at with the fee structure for Parks and Recreation? I recalled there being a more optimistic outlook for having cost recovery with our new with the new plan that we reviewed, and I'm wondering is looking at a less sort of conservative prediction of the fees that we might be receiving an opportunity to reduce property taxes?
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Chance.
Okay, thank you through you, Chair. I absolutely, the economic analysis that was received by Council provided a number of opportunities to increase or address programming adjustments to improve the recovery rate. Those are still yet to come back. We had initially adjusted fees in programs that were ready for change. And then need further direction from Council, or we would like to implement them over time. So those will come back. I hope I haven't misunderstood the question, but I think that you know, if we look to earlier comments that I made this evening about where we are, about what the previous target level was, and that we will have to continue to keep an eye on it. I have to admit, as a finance guy, I come by pessimism, honestly. So the financial plan numbers will always be a conservative estimate, or typically, maybe not always, but typically. But decisions that we make on service levels or directing programs, or in the case of the economic analysis, changing fees, will absolutely affect that picture going forward.
Thank you. Just remind us when we do the fees and charges review. What time of year is that? Do you remember? Mr.
Yes,
Schatz?
that's typically right after we approve the financial plan. The team will head into that analysis in preparation for September 1st fee increases. It'll come to Council somewhere in around May. I don't want to say June. June? We do want to say June? Okay, I'm hearing June.
May or June, got it.
Which is very typical of recreation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I'm also just going to cycle back a question we had earlier from Mr. Mooney, and that was just the question of doing at least, you know, part of this budget process. We obviously can't approve things before we get things like regional district budgets and other things to finalize, but we've moved this forward actually, interestingly enough, from where it used to be to where it is now, and we've done a much more robust provisional budget discussion. But are we looking to change the timelines significantly, like next year? Or I know there's some sort of look overall at the process, but can you share any of those thoughts at this point, or are they not fully developed?
Yes, thank you for the question. Absolutely, the timing for our current financial plan timeline was established before I arrived. We have options to change that timing, and it does happen within other municipalities with December deadlines. So December would be the final approval of the budget, allowing the utility rates, fees and charges all to go into effect for January 1st, but it also allows all of the taxation funded programs to go to procurement, as our resident mentioned earlier this evening. And so I think that if we want to explore that, I'm happy to do that. There are implications to our resourcing levels, implications for Council, implications for my colleagues around the table in terms of timing that work. But the financial plan timeline is within our control, and other jurisdictions do it very successfast.
I did, and the other thing I remembered I was going to say, Mr. Mooney, and your thing was that one of the things we have done in the last few years is have a much more robust 5-year capital plan. because the funding authorization actually does come with that 5-year financial plan, and so the large capital projects actually can be ordered and procured and things earlier than the thing. We used to be always caught in this. We wouldn't be able to get contractors by the time we closed our budget, and we've really superseded that by going to that robust 5-year financial planning cycle. So I am very proud of the work that the staff have done to actually start mapping these projects out, because this allows us to do that. Other questions? Council at this time? Councillor Appleton, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just in terms of, I think what you were requesting was some clarity on questions that staff would need to prepare for materials for next time. So I'll just make reference specifically to Appendix 4, which is the summary of new requests. There are a number of items or a number of descriptions under budget item description with respect to individual positions that refer to offsetting costs. Under the purchasing manager role, expected cost reductions of approximately 35 to 40,000. Also under corporate administration, in terms of the HR advisor, offsetting with reduction in funding for contractor investigation file management. Building and planning, offsetting costs, revenue in terms of permit recovery and things of that nature. So I would like, please, to request that where those references are made, that council be provided with a degree of granularity about those projections to the extent, the maximum extent that's possible for those types of things. Certainly, I understand the logic and the reasoning behind sort of recovery, investing in HR to where there will be recovery rates or there will be potential recoveries. I think we need to get as granular as possible on those things. In the current, I'll be blunt, in the current financial environment, I think we are literally looking at every 0.1% of tax increase in the budget overall. So even if even if some of the new projects and some of the new initiatives constitute, like I say, 0.1%, 0.15%, I believe that it's council's responsibility to look at each and every one of those in this current context. So I would like to get a little bit more granularity about that, if I could, Your Worship. And then with respect to...
Before you move on,
yeah.
I'm just going to make sure, is there any questions for staff on that one in terms of providing that granularity? I just want to make sure that there's... is the staff need any clarification for what that would look like, or are you okay with that request?
Thank you for the opportunity. Through you, Chair, I would like to clarify. I think there's a specific newer requests that were called out that talk about offsetting. Not every new request has offsetting. But the second part of the request was to look at anything that drives expenses. And so just some clarity on exactly what new requests you'd like more detail on.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. My first comment was specifically with respect to those items laid out in the summary of new requests in Appendix 4 that described offsetting costs. My second comment was a broader comment for council in general about the breadth of the entirety of the budget and each individual line item where we might be able to recover costs and decrease the tax burden. So that was intended as a general comment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. And then with respect to, this is actually jumping ahead to content that we have not yet discussed tonight, but just in preparation for the discussion around revenue and reserve and debt schedules that I understand we'll talk about next time. I would just like to request, with respect to the, in Appendix 9, there's a 5-year budget or a borrowing table. And that is, I believe, on page 7. Oh, actually, on page 8, excuse me. The two tables on page 8 of Appendix 9 lay out various, I'm looking at my digital copy here on the so I'm not sure where you're in the print copy, but tab 11. final page, page 8 of Appendix 9 describes a 5-year projected borrowing and debt servicing costs. And I'm just wondering whether we can request additional granularity for the 5-year borrowing table, just in terms of these projections, which I understand are necessarily round numbers, but I would like to ask and request for as much granularity and as much precision as possible on those numbers to the extent that that's possible. I would also like to request that where those are available, that there are options presented as far as line items, just in terms of overall costs and overall timelines for some of those individual pieces, and projected, revised projected timelines. And I would also like to request, essentially, I'd like us to have a discussion about the percentage tax impacts over a number of years of borrowing that are outlined in the last table on page 8, and how that connects to year-over-year overall tax projections that are earlier in this document. I'm seeing numbers that don't necessarily, at least in my initial reading, are not necessarily aligning, especially in later years when the borrowing increases. So I'm looking beyond, not just at this upcoming year, but I have questions and frankly concerns about the upcoming tax impacts of this debt servicing. So I would kind of like to get into as much detail as we possibly can on that aspect, Your Worship. Thank you.
I might just add to that last one on the, I should probably ask the question at time, but I'm curious about, there's many programs, at least currently available, for things like capital towards daycare, capital towards some things like that, that might be part of Carnarvon. I'd be curious about how much this is sort of representing the worst case scenario versus or whether those things are being built in, but we can talk about that when we get to it next week. I think it's probably fine. Councillor Patterson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And again, just building on Councillor Appleton's remarks, I would also like to have some statements about risk and or certainty in what is presented. And I'll give my example of that. It is at Carnarvon Park building. There's certainly certain risks to it, and there's certainties to it, but right now the budget that is in here is very high level, and I think the only certainty I see in the budgets as they're presented is really the annual budget rather than the 5-year budget. So I'm wondering if you could present more of how you have assessed risk and certainty for the 5-year plan, and where we might be positioned to have a more fulsome 10-year plan that brings greater certainty and risk evaluation to it, because these are very, very large borrowing. The debt is significant for a community of this size, so I think the more that we can tease out that information, it would be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Don't see other questions, so I think we're ready to wrap this up for tonight, I believe. Anything else you wish to add, Ms. LaChance? We have 3 minutes left before I have to extend the meeting, so I'm just deciding whether we have to extend the meeting or not.
I'll take your lead. Absolutely, I've got my notes here, and I think every request is doable. I really appreciate the attention that Mayor and Council are paying to any type of borrowing. It's prudent. The reference to a longer-term capital plan absolutely will help us do better long-term financial management. And then I think the granularity is completely reasonable to bring back by next week. Okay.
I don't see any other questions here, and I think we all probably need a little break from sitting. So why don't we have a motion to adjourn? Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, thank